In this video, we're breaking down 2 hours of Naruto facts to fall asleep to. Let's get started. First up, we have Naruto was almost a story about a chef before Kishimoto turned him into a ninja. Naruto was almost a story about a chef before Kishimoto turned him into a ninja. Masashi Kishimoto created one of the most popular manga series in history. Naruto has sold over 250 million copies worldwide. The series spawned 2 massive anime shows, countless movies, video games, and merchandise. The story of a young ninja who dreams of becoming his village's leader has touched millions of fans across the globe. But before any of that success happened, before the ninja battles and the chakra and the hidden villages, Kishimoto had a completely different vision for his main character. The teenage boy named Naruto was supposed to cook ramen for a living, not fight enemies with supernatural powers. The story of how Naruto almost became a chef instead of a ninja tells us a lot about the creative process behind manga. It shows us how editors shape stories, how artists struggle with rejection, and how one simple decision can change everything. Kishimoto was born on the 8th of November, 1974, in Okayama, Japan. He grew up with an identical twin brother named Seishi, and both boys loved anime and manga from a very young age. They spent hours watching shows together, especially Kinnikuman and Dragon Ball. Kishimoto looked up to Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball, and dreamed of making manga just like him. During elementary school, Kishimoto started drawing his favorite characters from the shows he watched. He practiced constantly, filling notebook after notebook with drawings. As he got older, his love for manga grew stronger, but his grades started slipping. He cared more about drawing than studying, which worried his family. When Kishimoto was in high school, something interesting happened. He took a break from drawing to focus on sports like baseball and basketball. But then he saw a poster for the anime film Akira, created by Katsuhiro Otomo. That poster changed everything. The artwork was so powerful and detailed that it pulled Kishimoto back into the world of manga. He picked up his pen again and decided he would become a professional manga artist no matter what. He went to Kyushu Sangyo University to study art. During his college years, he spent most of his time working on his drawing skills and thinking about story ideas. There was a ramen shop right near his campus called Ichiraku Ramen, and Kishimoto ate there all the time. He absolutely loved ramen. The shop became his favorite place, somewhere he could relax and think about his future. That little ramen shop would end up playing a huge role in his career, even though he had no idea at the time. In 1995, Kishimoto submitted a manga pilot called Karakuri to a publishing company named Shueisha. The story earned him an honorable mention in the Hopstep Award in 1996, which was given to promising new manga artists. This was a big deal because it meant professionals in the industry saw potential in his work. After winning that award, Kishimoto was assigned an editor named Kosuke Yahagi. Having an editor meant Kishimoto could now work on developing his ideas and hopefully get something published in Weekly Shonen Jump, the most popular manga magazine in Japan. But getting an editor turned out to be just the beginning of a very difficult journey. For the next couple of years, Kishimoto worked on multiple projects that all got rejected. He created a slice-of-life manga called Michikusa, which means Wandering Detour. The publishers said no. He worked on an action manga called Asian Punk. They said no again. He kept trying and kept failing. In December 1997, Kishimoto got a chance to publish a new version of Karakuri in Weekly Shonen Jump. He was excited because this could be his big break. But there was a problem. The deadline came way too fast. He had to rush to finish the manga, and the final product suffered because of it. When Karakuri was published in early 1998, readers responded poorly. The manga performed terribly in the reader surveys that Weekly Shonen Jump used to decide which series would continue. Karakuri was cancelled immediately after just 1 chapter. This rejection hit Kishimoto hard. He had worked so hard and come so close to success, but it all fell apart. He started to think that maybe he was not cut out for shonen manga. Shonen manga is written for young boys and typically features action, adventure, friendship, and characters who never give up. Maybe his style was better suited for seinen manga, which is written for older readers and deals with more mature themes. Kishimoto began working on drafts for a baseball manga called Yakuo, which means Baseball King. He also started developing a mafia manga called Mario. He thought that if he switched to seinen magazines instead of Shonen Jump, he might find more success. His editor Yahagi had other ideas. Yahagi believed Kishimoto could succeed with shonen manga if he just kept trying. He convinced Kishimoto to give the shonen genre one more shot before giving up completely. So Kishimoto started working on new ideas. He began developing a fantasy story called Magic Mushroom, but before he could finish it, his editor called with different instructions. Yahagi told him to stop working on Magic Mushroom and instead focus on creating something they could serialize in Weekly Shonen Jump. This meant developing a story that could run for many chapters, instead of just being a one-time thing. Kishimoto needed to create something special, something that would catch readers' attention and keep them coming back week after week. This is when the original idea for Naruto started taking shape. And at the very beginning, the concept had nothing to do with ninjas. In 2013, Kishimoto gave an interview to a fan magazine called Naruto Maigen Shu. During that interview, he revealed something that shocked many fans. He explained that Naruto was originally supposed to be a story about a teenager who worked as an apprentice in a ramen shop. The main character would still be named Naruto, but instead of learning ninja techniques and fighting enemies, he would be learning how to make perfect ramen and dealing with the challenges of working under a master chef. There would be no action scenes, no supernatural powers, no giant foxes sealed inside people's bodies. Just a boy trying to become a great ramen chef. Kishimoto told the interviewer that he pitched this cooking manga idea to his editor. His editor's response was blunt and immediate. The editor said it would never work. He told Kishimoto that a manga about cooking ramen had no chance of succeeding in Weekly Shonen Jump. The magazine's readers wanted action and excitement, not slice-of-life stories about food preparation. Kishimoto had to find something else. The rejection must have been disappointing, especially since Kishimoto loved ramen so much. But looking back, we can see why the editor made that call. At the time, cooking manga were not popular in Shonen Jump. The magazine focused on fighting series, sports series, and adventure stories. A quiet story about a ramen apprentice did not fit what readers expected. Of course, years later, cooking manga like Food Wars would become successful, but that was a different era with different reader expectations. In the interview, the magazine asked Kishimoto why he wanted to write about ramen in the first place. He explained that he loved ramen and especially loved the Ichiraku ramen shop near his college. He had such fond memories of eating there that he wanted to create a story inspired by it. In fact, when Naruto finally did become a ninja manga, Kishimoto made sure to include Ichiraku ramen in the story. The shop appears in the manga and anime as Naruto's favorite place to eat. The character Naruto is completely obsessed with ramen, eating bowl after bowl whenever he gets the chance. This was Kishimoto's way of keeping his love for ramen alive in the series, even though the main story had changed completely. The name Naruto also comes directly from ramen. Narutomaki is a type of Japanese fish cake that often appears as a topping in ramen bowls. The fish cake is made from white fish paste that gets steamed into a log shape. Before steaming, half the paste is dyed pink, and then the two colors are rolled together to create a spiral pattern. When you slice the log, each piece shows a pink swirl in the center. The pattern is supposed to look like the whirlpools in the Naruto Strait, a body of water between two Japanese islands where powerful natural whirlpools form. These whirlpools are famous in Japan, and the fish cake was named after them. Narutomaki became a popular ramen topping during the 20th century. It adds color to a bowl that otherwise looks very brown and beige, and it has a mild, slightly chewy texture that complements the noodles. The fish cake does not taste very fishy because the fish gets washed repeatedly during preparation, removing most of the strong seafood flavor. What remains is a subtle umami taste that blends into the background of the ramen. When Kishimoto decided to name his main character Naruto, he was making a direct reference to his favorite food. The character's obsession with ramen mirrors the creator's own love for it. The fact that Ichiraku Ramen appears in the story as a real place that Naruto visits constantly is another tribute to those college days when Kishimoto ate at the actual Ichiraku shop. All these details show how much the original ramen chef concept meant to Kishimoto, even after he had to abandon that version of the story. After his editor rejected the cooking manga, Kishimoto had to come up with something new quickly. He kept the name Naruto, but changed almost everything else about the concept. He decided to create a story about monsters and magic instead. In this new version, Naruto would be a boy who could transform into a fox. This became the basis for a one-shot manga that Kishimoto wrote in 1997. A one-shot manga is a self-contained story published in a single chapter. It allows artists to test ideas and see how readers respond without committing to a long series. Kishimoto's one-shot version of Naruto was published in the summer 1997 issue of Akamaru Jump, which came out on the 28th of September 1997. This version of Naruto was completely different from what eventually became the serialized manga. In the one-shot, Naruto is not a human with a demon sealed inside him. Instead, he is actually a demon fox, living in the form of a human boy. The story takes place at Mount Oinari, a village where Naruto grew up. His father was a powerful nine-tailed fox demon who attacked the village years ago. 9 strong warriors came together to fight the demon, and only one of them survived. That survivor, who became the village chief, took pity on the demon's son and allowed Naruto to grow up in the village, but the villagers never trusted Naruto. They looked at him with anger and fear, blaming him for what his father did. Naruto grew up without any friends, resenting the way people treated him. The village chief eventually sent Naruto away on a mission. He told Naruto to go to the big city and make a friend, and not to come back until he succeeded. When Naruto arrived in the city, he met an artist named Kuroda and his assistant Takashi. The story follows Naruto as he tries to befriend these men while also solving a murder mystery. Someone kills Takashi and tries to frame Naruto for the crime. Naruto has to use his shape-shifting abilities to discover the real killer and prove his innocence. Along the way, he learns about trust and friendship. The one-shot had some elements that would carry over to the final Naruto series. The nine-tailed fox concept remained important. The idea of a character who is shunned by others because of something beyond his control also stayed in the story. But overall, the tone and setting were very different. The one-shot took place in a modern city with cars and guns. There were no ninjas at all. It was more of an urban fantasy story about a demon trying to fit into human society. The readers who responded to surveys actually liked the one-shot. The feedback was positive, but Kishimoto himself was not happy with how it turned out. He felt the art was not good enough, and he thought the story needed work. He also realized that the concept would be hard to turn into a long-running series. A demon boy solving mysteries in a modern city could work for a one-shot, but stretching that idea across hundreds of chapters would be difficult. Around this same time, Kishimoto's editor Yahagi was pushing him to develop something that could be serialized. The two of them sat down and started discussing how to rework Naruto into something that would work for Weekly Shonen Jump. They decided to change the setting completely. Instead of a modern city, they would use a more traditional Japanese setting. And instead of focusing on demons and magic, they would make it a ninja story. When the interviewer in 2013 asked Kishimoto if he liked ninjas, his answer was surprising. He said he did not particularly like them. He chose ninjas because he loved Japanese stories and folklore, and ninjas fit into that world. But making Naruto about ninjas was not his first choice. It was something he did because his editor convinced him it would work better for the magazine. This reveals an interesting truth about creative work in the manga industry. Artists often have to compromise their original vision to fit what publishers and editors think will sell. Kishimoto had wanted to make a ramen manga. When that got rejected, he tried a Demon Fox story. When that needed changes, he agreed to make it about ninjas. Each step took him further from his original idea, but each step also brought him closer to creating something that would actually succeed in the competitive world of manga publishing. Kishimoto and Yahagi worked together to develop the new ninja version of Naruto. They created storyboards for the first 3 chapters and submitted them to Weekly Shonen Jump. The editors at the magazine liked what they saw and gave Kishimoto a spot for serialization. This was huge. After years of rejection and failure, Kishimoto finally got his chance. But there was something unusual about the timing. Normally, when a manga gets approved for serialization, it starts publishing the next month. For some reason, the editors gave Kishimoto 3 or 4 extra months before his first chapter had to come out. Those extra months became crucial. Kishimoto used that time to revise and redraw the early chapters over and over again. He wanted everything to be perfect. He kept changing details in the rough drafts, improving the art, tightening the story. By the time the first chapter of Naruto was finally published in September 1999, Kishimoto had already finished drawing the 8th chapter. He had built up a huge buffer of completed work. which meant he could work without stress for the first few weeks of serialization. Kishimoto later said that if he had not been given that extra preparation time, Naruto probably would not have succeeded. He needed those months to get the story right. The transition from ramen chef to ninja changed everything about Naruto as a character. Instead of learning to cook, he would learn jutsu and fight in battles. Instead of working in a small shop, he would train to become his village's greatest protector. The scope expanded massively, but even with all those changes, little pieces of the original concept remained. Naruto still loved ramen more than anything else. Ichiraku Ramen still appeared as his favorite restaurant. His name still came from a ramen topping. And the character's core desire to be recognized and respected by the people around him stayed the same whether he was cooking food or fighting enemies. The interviewer in the 2013 magazine also asked Kishimoto about other aspects of the series. Kishimoto explained that he intentionally avoided making Naruto feel too specifically Japanese. He wanted readers from all countries to enjoy it. So even though the story featured ninjas and Japanese-style villages, the characters wore modern-looking clothes with zippers and vests. There were telephone poles in some scenes. Kishimoto was mixing old and new, traditional and modern, to create a world that felt both Japanese and universal. Looking back at how Naruto almost became a cooking manga instead of a ninja action series, we can see how much influence editors have on popular culture. Kosuke Yahagi's decision to reject the ramen chef concept and push Kishimoto toward ninjas changed manga history. If Yahagi had approved the cooking story, or if a different editor had been assigned to Kishimoto, Naruto might never have become the global phenomenon it is today. Yahagi continued working with Kishimoto for several years after Naruto started serialization. He made many other suggestions that shaped the series. For example, Kishimoto wanted to name the character Gaara something different. He planned to call him Kotaro Fuma, but Yahagi suggested Gaara instead, saying it was more memorable. Kishimoto agreed and changed the name. Yahagi also convinced Kishimoto to create Sasuke Uchiha as Naruto's rival. Originally, Kishimoto did not plan to have a major rival character, but Yahagi argued that the story needed one. So Kishimoto created Sasuke, and the relationship between Naruto and Sasuke became one of the most important elements of the entire series. The story of Naruto's origins shows us that great art often comes from collaboration and compromise. Kishimoto had a vision, but his editor helped him refine that vision into something that could succeed. Without Yahagi's guidance, Kishimoto might have kept pursuing ideas that would not have worked. And without Kishimoto's talent and work ethic, even the best editorial advice would not have mattered. The two of them worked together to create something neither could have achieved alone. Kishimoto's journey from aspiring manga artist to one of the most successful creators in the industry took many years and involved countless setbacks. The fact that he was willing to adapt his ideas, to listen to criticism, and to keep trying after repeated failures shows the kind of determination that eventually leads to success. His willingness to change Naruto from a ramen chef to a ninja, even though he did not particularly love ninjas, demonstrates the practical mindset needed to survive in a competitive creative field. Today, fans all over the world know Naruto as the orange-clad ninja who never gives up. They know him as the boy with a demon fox sealed inside him, who dreams of becoming Hokage. But in another timeline, in another version of events, readers might have known Naruto as the enthusiastic ramen chef apprentice, learning to make the perfect bowl of noodles under the guidance of a master. That version of Naruto never got published. It exists only in Kishimoto's memory and in the interview he gave years later, yet traces of it remain in the series we got. Every time Naruto sits down at Ichiraku Ramen and orders another bowl, every time he smiles while eating his favorite food, we see a glimpse of that original concept. We see the ramen chef that Naruto was always meant to be, before editors and market forces turned him into something else entirely. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Next up, the very first Naruto one-shot was actually about a boy who could transform into a fox. The first Naruto one-shot was about a boy who could transform into a fox. In 1997, a young manga artist named Masashi Kishimoto published a one-shot story in a magazine called Akamaru Jump. The story was about a boy named Naruto who could transform into a fox. This was not the Naruto that millions of fans around the world would come to know and love. This was a completely different version of the character, set in a completely different world, with a completely different story. The one-shot appeared in the summer issue of Akamaru Jump, which had a cover date of the 28th of September 1997. It marked Kishimoto's attempt to create something that could become a serialized manga, a story that would run for many chapters and build a loyal audience. But this first version of Naruto never made it beyond that single chapter. To understand why, we need to look at what the story was actually about and how it differed from what Naruto eventually became. The one-shot begins with a backstory that sets up the entire world. Many years before the main events of the story, a powerful and dangerous creature called the Nine-Tailed Fox lived on Mount Oinari. This fox was massive and destructive, causing death and chaos wherever it went. The creature attacked a village, and 9 powerful warriors came together to stop it. These were not ninjas in the traditional sense. They were skilled fighters who knew special techniques, but the story does not focus on ninja clans or hidden villages or any of the complex world building that would define the later Naruto series. The 9 warriors fought bravely against the Nine-Tailed Fox, and they managed to seal it away, but the cost was terrible. 8 of the 9 warriors died in the battle, only 1 survived. That lone survivor became the chief of the village on Mount Oinari. He had witnessed the fox's power and destruction firsthand, and he understood the danger it represented. But when he discovered that the fox had a son, a young fox demon who had nothing to do with his father's rampage, the chief made a compassionate choice. Instead of killing the child or driving it away, he allowed the young fox to live in the village and grow up among humans. This young fox is Naruto, the main character of the one-shot. Naruto lives in the village disguised as a human boy. He can shapeshift and take on human form, so most of the time he looks and acts like a regular child, but everyone in the village knows what he really is. They know he is the son of the monster that killed so many of their people. Because of this, the villagers treat Naruto with suspicion and fear. They give him angry looks, they avoid him. No one wants to be his friend. No one trusts him. This isolation shapes Naruto's personality in the one-shot. He grows up bitter and resentful. He has developed a sharp tongue and a defensive attitude. He is not the cheerful, optimistic character that fans of the later series would recognize. This Naruto is more cynical, more guarded. He understands that the world sees him as a monster, and he has built walls around himself because of it. The village chief, who allowed Naruto to stay in the village, becomes concerned about the boy's inability to connect with anyone. He decides to send Naruto on a special mission. The chief tells Naruto to leave Mount Oinari and travel to the big city. While there, Naruto must make a friend and bring that friend back to the village. Only then will the chief allow Naruto to return home. Naruto accepts the mission, though he is not enthusiastic about it. He travels to a large modern city, a place very different from the traditional village setting where he grew up. The city has cars driving on paved roads. There are tall buildings and busy streets. People wear contemporary clothing. This is not a fantasy world or a historical setting. It is essentially modern-day Japan, probably set sometime in the late 1990s when Kishimoto wrote the story. The contrast between Mount Oinari and the city emphasizes how disconnected Naruto has been from normal society. He has grown up in a small, isolated community where everyone knows his secret. Now, he must navigate an urban environment where no one knows who or what he really is. Shortly after arriving in the city, Naruto encounters 2 men. One is an artist named Kuroda, and the other is Kuroda's assistant named Takashi. The story does not explain exactly how they meet, but Naruto begins to spend time with them. Kuroda is a talented artist who has had some success in the art world. Takashi is younger and works as Kuroda's helper. The 2 men seem friendly enough, and for the first time in his life, Naruto starts to feel like he might actually be able to make friends. One evening, Kuroda gets drunk and passes out. Naruto helps bring him back to his home. When Kuroda wakes up the next morning, he is grateful to Naruto for taking care of him. To show his appreciation, Kuroda invites Naruto to drink with him. Naruto protests at first, saying he is too young to drink alcohol, but Kuroda insists, and eventually Naruto gives in. The 2 of them, along with Takashi, begin drinking together. As Naruto gets more and more drunk, he loses control of his abilities. He decides to show off his powers to the 2 artists. He performs a transformation technique, turning himself into an attractive young woman wearing only a bikini. However, because he is drunk and his control is imperfect, he fails to transform completely. His fox tail remains visible. Kuroda and Takashi are shocked and confused by what they are seeing. Before they can fully process what just happened, the mood of the story shifts dramatically. Outside the building, someone is attaching a silencer to a gun. The story cuts away from the comedic moment of Naruto's failed transformation to introduce a threat. The next major event in the story is a murder. Takashi, the young assistant who had been friendly to Naruto, is found dead. The police immediately suspect Naruto because he was one of the last people seen with the victim. This puts Naruto in a terrible position. He came to the city to make friends, and just when he thought he had succeeded, his potential friend is murdered and he becomes the prime suspect. The situation gets worse when a valuable painting also goes missing. The painting is an important artwork created by an artist named Saburo, who was once Kuroda's friend. The police believe that Naruto killed Takashi and stole the painting. Now Naruto must prove his innocence. He uses his abilities as a fox demon to investigate the crime. His enhanced senses give him advantages that normal people do not have. He can track scents and detect things that others miss. As he investigates, Naruto begins to uncover the truth about what really happened. The story reveals a tragic history between Kuroda and Saburo. These two artists had been close friends years ago, but jealousy and ambition drove them apart. Saburo wanted the success and recognition that Kuroda achieved. He tried to kill Kuroda to take his position in the art world. The attempt failed, but it destroyed their friendship completely. Saburo, overwhelmed with guilt and shame over what he had done, painted one final masterpiece and then took his own life. That painting became valuable and famous, a symbol of Saburo's talent and his tragic end. But someone stole the painting, and that theft connects directly to Takashi's murder. As Naruto digs deeper into the mystery, he discovers that a police officer named Matsushima is behind everything. Matsushima murdered Takashi and stole the painting. He planned to frame Naruto for both crimes, figuring that people would easily believe a fox demon was capable of murder and theft. Matsushima thought he could get away with his crimes by using Naruto as a scapegoat. When Naruto confronts Matsushima, the corrupt police officer tries to kill him. Matsushima has a gun, the same weapon he used to kill Takashi. But Naruto is not helpless. He reveals his true nature as a fox demon. He transforms into his real form, showing his 9 tails. In the one shot, Naruto has 9 tails just like his father did, unlike the later series where Naruto is human and the 9-tailed fox is sealed inside him. Using his tails as weapons, Naruto captures Matsushima and holds him until other police officers arrive. These honest police officers take Matsushima into custody. They have already gotten a confession from another officer who was involved in the crime. Matsushima tries to deny everything, but the evidence against him is overwhelming. With the real criminal caught and his own name cleared, Naruto has accomplished something important. He solved a murder case and brought a killer to justice. But more importantly, he earned the trust and gratitude of Kuroda. The artist thanks Naruto for recovering the stolen painting and for revealing the truth about what happened to Takashi. This moment represents Naruto completing his mission. He came to the city to make a friend, and despite all the complications and danger, he succeeded. The story ends with Naruto having proven himself to someone, having earned respect and friendship through his actions. This conclusion carries an emotional weight because it shows Naruto overcoming the isolation and rejection that defined his life in the village. The one-shot received positive feedback from readers who participated in surveys. People who read it in Akamaru Jump generally liked the story. The surveys that manga magazines use to gauge reader interest showed that the one-shot had potential. This was good news for Kishimoto, who had struggled for years to get his work accepted and published. After so many rejections and failures, he finally had something that readers responded to positively. But despite the good reception from readers, Kishimoto himself was not satisfied with what he had created. Years later, in interviews, Kishimoto explained that he was unhappy with both the art and the story of the one-shot. He felt that the artwork was not up to his standards. The drawings did not look the way he wanted them to look. The storytelling also felt incomplete to him. He had created a self-contained story that worked as a one-shot, but he struggled to see how it could expand into a long-running series. A manga that lasts for years needs to have endless possibilities for new stories and character development. The one-shot about a fox demon solving a murder mystery in a modern city did not seem to have that kind of potential. The setting was too limiting. Modern urban environments do not provide as many opportunities for the kind of fantastic battles and adventures that shonen manga readers expect. The concept of Naruto as a fox demon who could transform and blend into human society was interesting for one story, but stretching it across hundreds of chapters would be difficult. What would the ongoing conflicts be? How would the stakes escalate? What kind of character growth could happen? These questions concerned Kishimoto as he thought about the future of the series. Around the same time that the one-shot was published, Kishimoto was also dealing with other professional challenges. He had been working on redeveloping his earlier manga called Karakuri for serialization in Weekly Shonen Jump. That version of Karakuri ended up being published in early 1998, but it failed immediately and got cancelled after performing poorly in reader surveys. The failure of Karakuri was devastating for Kishimoto. It meant that even though the Naruto one-shot had gotten good responses, he still did not have a series that could sustain itself in Weekly Shonen Jump. His editor, Kosuke Yahagi, recognized that Kishimoto had something valuable with Naruto, but they needed to rework the concept significantly. They needed to change the setting, expand the world, and create a framework that could support hundreds of chapters of storytelling. This is when they made the crucial decision to transform Naruto from a story about fox demons into a story about ninjas. The decision to focus on ninjas changed everything about the concept. Instead of a modern city with cars and guns, the story would take place in a world of hidden villages with traditional Japanese influences mixed with fantasy elements. Instead of police officers and artists, the story would feature ninja clans and missions and training. The scope expanded dramatically. But this decision also meant abandoning almost everything from the one-shot except the core idea of a character who is shunned because of a connection to a powerful fox demon. In the revised version, Naruto would not be the fox's son. Instead, he would be a human boy with the fox sealed inside his body. This change made Naruto more relatable. Readers could see him as fundamentally human, someone like them who happened to have an incredible power locked within him. The fox became a source of strength rather than the definition of his identity. The character of Naruto also changed significantly. The bitter, defensive fox boy from the one-shot became the cheerful, determined ninja boy of the series. The new Naruto had more energy and optimism. He made jokes and pulled pranks. He was loud and attention-seeking. These personality traits made him more appealing as a protagonist for a long-running shonen series. Readers could root for someone who never gave up and who faced every challenge with enthusiasm, even when the odds were against him. The setting of Mount Oinari disappeared completely. In its place came the Hidden Leaf Village, also known as Konoha. This was a much more developed location with its own history, culture, and political structures. The village was part of a larger world that included other hidden villages, each with its own ninja specialties and philosophies. This world building created endless possibilities for stories. The one-shot had featured only a few characters, but the serialized version would introduce dozens and eventually hundreds of characters, each with their own abilities and storylines. The concept of the 9 warriors who fought the fox demon evolved into the Hokages, the leaders of the Hidden Leaf Village. The village chief from the one-shot became the basis for the 3rd Hokage, an elderly leader who protected Naruto and kept his secret. The basic dynamic of a village that knows about Naruto's connection to the fox demon but has mixed feelings about him remained in the new version. Some visual elements from the one-shot carried over to the final design. Kishimoto's original sketch of Naruto for the one-shot showed the character wearing goggles instead of the headband that became iconic in the series. Kishimoto has mentioned in interviews that drawing the goggles for every panel became tedious and time-consuming. This practical concern led him to replace the goggles with the ninja headband, which was simpler to draw and became a key symbol in the series. The headband indicated which village a ninja came from and served as a badge of identity and pride. The transformation technique that Naruto used in the one-shot also carried over, though it evolved into something more specific. In the one-shot, drunk Naruto transformed into an attractive woman wearing a bikini but failed to hide his foxtail. In the serialized manga, this became the sexy jutsu, a comedic technique where Naruto transforms into a beautiful woman to distract and confuse his opponents. The jutsu serves little practical purpose in battle, but it shows Naruto's playful personality and provides comic relief. The character of Toichi, the owner of Ichiraku Ramen, appears in both the one-shot and the series. In the one-shot, he plays a very minor role, but in the series, he becomes one of the few people in the village who treats Naruto kindly from the beginning. His ramen shop becomes Naruto's favorite place, a refuge where he always feels welcome. This connection to the one-shot shows how Kishimoto preserved small elements of his original vision, even as he changed almost everything else. The one-shot's plot about solving a murder mystery and recovering a stolen painting disappeared entirely from the ninja version. The serialized Naruto focuses on training, missions, battles, and the relationships between characters rather than detective work. The tone shifted from a relatively grounded story about art world corruption to an epic tale of ninja warfare, ancient prophecies, and world-threatening villains. The modern setting with its cars and guns vanished, replaced by a world where technology and tradition mix in unusual ways. Looking at the one-shot today, knowing what Naruto eventually became, reveals how much work goes into developing a successful manga. Kishimoto's first instinct about having Naruto be connected to a fox demon proved to be strong. That core idea survived multiple revisions and became central to the entire series. But almost everything else changed. The setting changed, the supporting characters changed, the tone changed, the genre changed. Only through this process of revision and reinvention did Kishimoto create something that could sustain itself for 15 years of serialization. The process also shows the importance of editorial guidance in manga creation. Readers liked the one-shot, but Kishimoto and his editor recognized its limitations. They made the hard decision to abandon a concept that was working on a small scale in favor of developing something that could work on a much larger scale. This required Kishimoto to let go of ideas he had invested time and creative energy into. It meant starting over in many ways, rebuilding the world and the story from the foundation up. Between the summer of 1997, when the one-shot was published, and September 1999, when the serialized version began, Kishimoto spent roughly 2 years developing the ninja version of Naruto. During that time, he and his editor Yahagi created the basic framework for the world. They established the concept of chakra as the energy source that powers ninja techniques. They developed the idea of hidden villages and the system of ninja ranks from academy students to genin, to chunin, to jonin, and eventually to kage, the village leaders. They created the basic character designs for Naruto's teammates and teachers. They planned out the first several story arcs to ensure they had a solid foundation before serialization began. This preparation time proved crucial. When Naruto finally debuted in Weekly Shonen Jump in 1999, it quickly gained popularity. The series found an audience and built momentum. Within a few years, it became one of the magazine's flagship titles, helping to save Shonen Jump from financial difficulties in the early 2000s. The ninja version of Naruto succeeded where the Fox Demon one-shot might have struggled because it fit better with reader expectations and provided more opportunities for growth and development. The one-shot remains an interesting artifact in manga history. It is included in some special editions and art books related to Naruto, allowing fans to see where the series started. Reading it provides insight into Kishimoto's creative process and shows how dramatically a concept can change during development. The one-shot proves that even successful creators produce work that does not meet their own standards, and that great art often requires multiple attempts and revisions. For fans who only know Naruto as a ninja, discovering the one-shot can be jarring. Seeing Naruto as an actual fox demon rather than a human with a demon sealed inside him changes the entire dynamic of the character. The modern setting with its cars and buildings feels completely disconnected from the world of hidden villages and ancient ninja techniques. The darker, more cynical personality of one-shot Naruto contrasts sharply with the optimistic, never-give-up attitude of series Naruto. Even the art style looks different, less refined than what Kishimoto would achieve after more years of practice and development. Yet, certain themes remain consistent between the one-shot and the series. Both versions of Naruto deal with a character who is rejected and feared by society because of something beyond his control. Both explore themes of loneliness and the desire for acceptance. Both show a character who must prove himself through his actions rather than his reputation. These emotional cores survived all the revisions and changes, suggesting that they were what Kishimoto truly wanted to explore in his storytelling. The journey from the one-shot to the serialized manga took years of work and involved countless decisions, both large and small. Each choice shaped the final product, deciding to make Naruto a ninja instead of a fox demon, to set the story in a fantasy world instead of a modern city, to focus on action and adventure instead of mystery and detection. All of these decisions built on each other to create something entirely new. Without the one-shot, the series might never have existed. But without the willingness to completely reimagine the one-shot, the series could never have achieved the success it did. Today, millions of fans around the world recognize Naruto as the orange-clad ninja with the fox demon sealed inside him. They know his story of rising from outcast to hero, from the worst student in his class to the savior of the entire ninja world. But before all of that, there was a boy who could transform into a fox, living in a modern city, trying to solve a murder and make his first friend. That version of Naruto existed only briefly, in a single chapter published in 1997. It never became the worldwide phenomenon that followed, but it was necessary. It was the first step on a long creative journey, the seed from which a massive story eventually grew. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to, from 2002 to 2017, the Naruto anime aired almost non-stop across 2 series. From 2002 to 2017, the Naruto anime aired almost non-stop across 2 series. In October 2002, a new anime series premiered on Japanese television. The show was called Naruto, and it was based on the manga series by Masashi Kishimoto. The first episode aired on the 3rd of October 2002 on a network called TV Tokyo. Nobody knew it at the time, but this anime would continue airing for almost 15 years straight, becoming one of the longest-running and most popular anime series in history. The anime adaptation of Naruto was not a small production. Studio Pierrot, a well-established Japanese animation company, took on the responsibility of bringing Kishimoto's manga to life. The studio was founded in 1979 and had already worked on many anime series before Naruto. TV Tokyo served as the broadcaster, and a company called Aniplex handled production alongside Studio Pierrot. The director who oversaw the entire project was named Hayato Date. He would remain the director for both Naruto series from beginning to end, maintaining a consistent vision across hundreds of episodes. When the first episode premiered in 2002, it introduced viewers to the world of ninjas that Kishimoto had created. The episode showed a 12-year-old boy named Naruto Uzumaki who dreamed of becoming the greatest ninja in his village. The animation brought the manga's black and white panels to life with color, movement, and voice acting. Tetsuya Nishio served as the character designer for the anime, adapting Kishimoto's original character designs for animation. Kishimoto himself had specifically requested that Nishio be given this role because he trusted Nishio's ability to translate his art style into animated form. The first Naruto series ran for exactly 220 episodes. These episodes aired weekly on TV Tokyo from the 3rd of October 2002 until the 8th of February 2007. That means the original series lasted roughly 4 years and 4 months. During this time, new episodes appeared every week, without any major breaks or gaps in the schedule. The show maintained a consistent presence on Japanese television throughout its entire run. The studio worked continuously to produce episodes, meeting weekly deadlines to deliver new content to viewers. The 220 episodes of the first series covered what fans call Part 1 of the Naruto story. This part focused on Naruto's early years as a young ninja, learning the basics of his profession. The first 135 episodes directly adapted content from Kishimoto's manga. These episodes followed the manga's storyline closely, showing the same events and battles that appeared in the original source material. However, the remaining 85 episodes of the first series were original content created specifically for the anime. These episodes are commonly called filler episodes. Filler episodes happen when an anime catches up to the manga it is based on. Since manga artists need time to draw and write new chapters, the anime sometimes reaches a point where no more manga chapters exist to adapt. Rather than taking a break and stopping production, anime studios often create original stories to fill the time. These filler episodes keep the show airing weekly, while giving the manga more time to get ahead. In Naruto's case, the studio created many filler episodes, especially toward the end of the first series. Some filler episodes told standalone stories that had nothing to do with the main plot. Other filler episodes created entire arcs that could span many episodes. These filler arcs featured original characters and adventures that Kishimoto never wrote in the manga. The amount of filler in Naruto was significant. Out of 220 total episodes, approximately 90 were filler episodes. That means about 41% of the first series consisted of non-canon content. Many fans find this frustrating because filler episodes do not advance the main story. They exist outside the official storyline and have no impact on later events. Characters introduced in filler episodes typically never appear again once the filler arc ends. Events that happen in filler episodes get forgotten as soon as the anime returns to adapting the manga. For viewers who want to follow only the main story, these filler episodes can feel like interruptions or distractions. However, filler episodes are not necessarily bad quality. Some filler episodes told entertaining stories and gave viewers more time with characters they loved. Some filler arcs explored side characters who did not get much attention in the manga. These episodes could flesh out personalities and backstories that the manga never had time to cover. A few filler arcs earned praise from fans for their creativity and emotional depth. But overall, the high percentage of filler meant that viewers had to sit through many episodes that did not matter to understand the main story. The first Naruto series ended on the 8th of February 2007 with episode 220. This final episode served as a transition point, sending the characters into a time skip. The manga had already jumped forward several years in the story, showing the characters as teenagers instead of children. The anime needed to make the same jump. Rather than continuing with the same series title, the studio decided to launch a completely new series with a different name. Just 1 week after the original Naruto series ended, the sequel series began airing. On the 15th of February 2007, the first episode of Naruto Shippuden premiered on TV Tokyo. The gap between the two series was only 7 days. This meant viewers experienced almost no interruption in the broadcast schedule. 1 week, they watched the final episode of Naruto, and the next week, they watched the first episode of Naruto Shippuden. The transition was smooth and seamless. Naruto Shippuden was not a spin-off or a separate story. It was a direct continuation of the first series, picking up exactly where the manga continued after its time skip. The word Shippuden translates roughly to Hurricane Chronicles in English, referring to the more intense and mature storylines that would follow. Naruto Shippuden maintained the same production team as the first series. Studio Pierrot continued handling the animation. TV Tokyo continued broadcasting the episodes. Hayato Date remained the director, ensuring stylistic and tonal consistency between the two series. Tetsuya Nishio continued as character designer, though he had to update the character designs to reflect that the cast had aged several years. Everything about the production remained stable and consistent. The only real change was the title and the fact that the story now followed teenage versions of the characters instead of children. Naruto Shippuden was a much longer series than the original. It ran for exactly 500 episodes, more than double the length of the first series. These episodes aired weekly from the 15th of February 2007 until the 23rd of March 2017. That means Naruto Shippuden lasted for 10 years and 1 month. Combined with the 4 years and 4 months of the original series, the entire Naruto anime ran for approximately 14.5 years. From October 2002 to March 2017, viewers could turn on TV Tokyo nearly every week and find a new Naruto episode airing. The show became a constant presence in the Japanese television landscape for over a decade. Like the first series, Naruto Shippuden adapted content from Kishimoto's manga while also including a substantial amount of filler. The manga's Part 2 story provided the basis for the main episodes. But the anime once again created many original episodes to maintain its weekly schedule. Out of 500 total episodes in Shippuden, approximately 196 to 203 were filler episodes, depending on how you count mixed episodes that contained both canon and filler content. This meant about 39 to 41% of Shippuden was filler, roughly the same percentage as the first series. The filler problem in Shippuden frustrated many fans even more than it had in the original series. Some of the filler arcs in Shippuden lasted for dozens of episodes. There were stretches where the anime would air filler for months at a time before returning to the main story. For viewers who wanted to follow Naruto's journey, these extended filler arcs tested their patience. The main story would reach a cliffhanger or an exciting moment, and then suddenly the show would shift to a completely unrelated filler arc for 20 or 30 episodes. By the time the show returned to the main plot, viewers had to remember what was happening before the interruption. Despite the filler problem, both Naruto series maintained strong viewership throughout their runs. The show became incredibly popular not just in Japan, but around the world. The anime helped introduce millions of people to the Naruto franchise. Many fans watched the anime before ever reading the manga. The animated version of the story, with its music, voice acting, and dynamic fight scenes, created an experience that the manga could not replicate. The anime brought Naruto's world to life in ways that static drawings on paper could not achieve. Studio Pierrot employed hundreds of animators, artists, and technicians to produce these episodes. Each episode required an enormous amount of work. Animators had to draw thousands of individual frames to create smooth motion. Background artists had to paint detailed environments. Voice actors had to record dialogue for every character. Composers had to create music to accompany emotional scenes and action sequences. Sound designers had to add effects for every punch, explosion, and jutsu technique. All of this work happened under strict weekly deadlines. The production team had to finish each episode in time for it to air on schedule. The technical quality of the animation varied throughout both series. Some episodes featured excellent animation with fluid movement and detailed art. Other episodes showed signs of rushed production, with simpler drawings and less dynamic action. This variation is normal for long-running weekly anime. When animators have to produce so many episodes in such a short time, they cannot maintain movie-quality animation for every single scene. The studio had to balance quality with efficiency, making sure episodes got finished on time even if that meant cutting some corners. The most important episodes, like major battles or emotional climaxes, typically received more resources and attention. These episodes would feature better animation and more impressive visuals. Less important episodes might have simpler animation to save time and money. One technical milestone happened during Naruto Shippuden's run. The first 53 episodes of Shippuden were produced in standard definition, maintaining the same format as the original Naruto series. Starting with episode 54, the show switched to high definition, offering improved visual quality for viewers with HD televisions. This switch happened in 2007, reflecting the broader transition happening in television broadcasting at that time. All episodes after episode 53 were produced in widescreen HD format, giving the show a more modern look. The first Naruto series was eventually remastered and re-released in a higher quality format. Starting in April 2009, TV Tokyo began re-airing episodes from the original series on Wednesday and Thursday nights. These reruns used remastered video with improved quality and added some new digital effects. The remastered version was called Naruto Shonen Hen, which roughly translates to Naruto Boyhood Chronicles. This allowed viewers who missed the original broadcast to watch the series again with better picture quality. The remastered version also served as a way for TV Tokyo to continue profiting from the Naruto franchise even after the original series had ended. Outside Japan, Naruto reached audiences through various distributors and streaming services. Viz Media licensed both series for North America, producing English-dubbed versions with American voice actors. The English dub of the first Naruto series began airing in the United States on the 10th of September 2005 on Cartoon Network's Toonami programming block. This was nearly 3 years after the Japanese premiere, meaning American audiences started watching the series while it was still airing new episodes in Japan. The English dub of Naruto aired on Cartoon Network until 2009, though Cartoon Network stopped broadcasting the show before airing all 220 episodes. The final 11 episodes of the English dub never aired on American television, though they were released on DVD. Naruto Shippuden's English dub had a more complicated broadcast history in the United States. Disney XD began airing the English dub in October 2009, but they stopped after 98 episodes in November 2011. After that, a streaming service called Neon Alley premiered new English dubbed episodes online from December 2012 until March 2016, reaching episode 338 before the service shut down. Eventually, Adult Swim's revived Toonami block began airing Naruto Shippuden in January 2014, starting from episode 1 and gradually catching up to the newer episodes. This meant American viewers had access to the English dub. but the broadcast schedule was irregular and inconsistent compared to the steady weekly schedule in Japan. The complicated distribution history in the United States reflected the challenges of bringing long-running anime to American audiences. Networks were unsure how to handle a series with hundreds of episodes, and the rise of streaming services during the 2010 seconds changed how people watched anime. The music for both Naruto series played a major role in the show's appeal. Japanese anime typically feature opening and ending theme songs that change every few months. These songs, performed by popular Japanese musicians, helped set the tone for each arc and became beloved by fans. Naruto and Naruto Shippuden featured dozens of different opening and ending themes throughout their runs. Some of these songs became famous even outside the anime community. The opening themes used energetic rock music that matched the show's action-packed nature. The ending themes were often softer and more emotional, reflecting the dramatic and sometimes sad storylines. These theme songs helped define different eras of the anime, and fans could often remember which arc was airing based on which song was playing. The background music throughout both series was also important. The composer created memorable tracks that played during important battles or emotional moments. Certain musical cues became associated with specific characters or themes. When fans heard those familiar melodies, they immediately knew something significant was about to happen. Naruto and Naruto Shippuden also spawned multiple theatrical films while the series were airing. Studio Pierrot produced 11 animated movies in total. These films typically premiered in Japanese theaters during summer, offering fans a chance to see their favorite characters on the big screen with movie-level animation budgets. The films told standalone stories that existed outside the main continuity of the series. Most of them could be watched without needing to know everything happening in the show, though they were positioned chronologically within the timeline of the series. Kishimoto himself provided input on some of these films, designing original characters and concepts specifically for the movies. The films performed well at the Japanese box office and helped maintain interest in the franchise between regular episodes. When Naruto Shippuden finally ended on the 23rd of March 2017, it marked the conclusion of nearly 15 years of continuous Naruto anime. The final episode wrapped up the main story, showing Naruto achieving his dream and the characters moving into adulthood. Episode 5, 100 of Shippuden, served as both an ending and a transition. The episode focused on Naruto's wedding, bringing closure to his personal story, while also setting up the next generation of characters who would star in the sequel series. The Naruto franchise did not end with Shippuden's conclusion. Even before Shippuden finished airing, plans were already in motion for a new series focusing on Naruto's son, Boruto Uzumaki. This new series, called Boruto Naruto Next Generations, premiered in April 2017, just 1 month after Shippuden ended. Studio Pierrot once again handled the production, ensuring continuity with the previous series. The torch had been passed to a new generation, but the anime production cycle continued uninterrupted. Looking back at the full run from October 2002 to March 2017, the scope of what Studio Pierrot accomplished is remarkable. They produced 720 episodes across 2 series, maintaining a weekly broadcast schedule for most of that time. They adapted hundreds of chapters from Kishimoto's manga, while also creating hundreds of filler episodes. They employed countless artists, animators, voice actors, and technicians over that 14-and-a-half-year period. They built one of the most successful anime franchises in history, creating a show that defined an era of shonen anime and influenced countless fans and creators around the world. The nearly non-stop airing of Naruto from 2002 to 2017 meant that an entire generation of fans grew up with the series. People who started watching as children when the first episode aired in 2002 were adults by the time Shippuden ended in 2017. The show became a constant companion for millions of viewers, airing new episodes almost every single week for 15 years. This kind of sustained production and broadcast schedule is rare in any medium. The fact that both series maintained their popularity and relevance across such a long period speaks to the strength of Kishimoto's original story and the dedication of everyone involved in bringing that story to animated life. From the first episode in October 2002 to the 500th episode of Shippuden in March 2017, Naruto remained a dominant force in anime culture, shaping the medium and inspiring countless fans around the world. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have the Sage of Six Paths created Kurama and the other tailed beasts by splitting the 10 tails. The Sage of Six Paths created Kurama and the other tailed beasts by splitting the 10 tails. Long before the ninja villages existed, before the shinobi world took its modern form, an extraordinary event shaped the entire history of chakra and the conflicts that would follow for centuries. A man named Hagoromo Otsutsuki, who would become known to history as the Sage of Six Paths, performed an act that seemed almost godlike in its scope and power. He took the most powerful creature that had ever existed, a monster called the 10 Tails, and split it into 9 separate beings. These 9 beings became known as the Tailed Beasts, and the most famous among them was Kurama, the 9-tailed fox. To understand why and how this happened, we need to go back to the very beginning of the story and follow the journey of the man who made it all possible. Hagoromo Otsutsuki was born in an age when chakra was still new to the world. His mother was named Kaguya Otsutsuki, a princess who came from somewhere beyond Earth. Kaguya ate a forbidden fruit that grew on a special tree called the God Tree. This fruit granted her incredible powers and the ability to use chakra, an energy force that combines spiritual and physical energy. With these new powers, Kaguya brought an end to the constant wars that plagued humanity at that time. She became revered as a goddess, someone who had powers far beyond what normal humans could comprehend. Kaguya had 2 sons. Hagoromo was the older twin, and his brother was named Hamura. Both boys were born with the same powerful chakra as their mother, making them special from birth. They could do things that no other humans at that time could do. As they grew older, the brothers began to notice something disturbing. Their mother was not using her powers just to keep peace. She was harvesting humans, treating them like crops to be gathered. She was draining people of their energy and chakra. The brothers realized their mother had become dangerous, and they knew they would have to stop her. The confrontation between Kaguya and her sons became inevitable. Kaguya merged with the God Tree, transforming herself into a massive creature called the 10 Tails. This was not a normal animal or beast. The 10 Tails was a manifestation of pure destructive power, a monster that rampaged across the land, causing death and chaos wherever it went. The battle between the brothers and the 10 Tails lasted for months. It was a struggle that pushed both Hagoromo and Hamura to their absolute limits. They fought with everything they had, using techniques and powers that would later become legendary. Finally, after an incredibly long and difficult fight, the brothers managed to defeat the 10 Tails. They sealed it away, trapping the monster so it could no longer harm anyone. In the process, they also sealed their mother, Kaguya, separating her from the 10 Tails and imprisoning her. But defeating the 10 Tails created a new problem. The monster still existed, even though it was sealed. Someone had to contain it, to keep it locked away so it could never escape and rampage again. Hagoromo made a decision that would change his life forever. He became the 10 Tails Jinchuriki, which means he sealed the beast inside his own body. This made Hagoromo the very first person in history to have a tailed beast sealed within them. The 10 Tails now lived inside Hagoromo, its enormous power contained by his will and his chakra. Being the Jinchuriki of the 10 Tails gave Hagoromo incredible abilities. He became recognized as a god among humans because of what he could do. People began calling him the Sage of Six Paths, a title that reflected his godlike powers and his mastery over chakra. He traveled the world, teaching people about chakra and how to use it. He developed a philosophy called Ninshu, which focused on using chakra to connect people's hearts and minds, to help them understand each other without words. His goal was to bring true peace to the world by spreading this wisdom and helping humanity evolve. But Hagoromo faced a serious problem. He was getting older, and he knew he would eventually die. When he died, the seal holding the 10 Tails inside him would break. The monster would be released back into the world, and all the destruction and chaos would begin again. Hagoromo needed to find a way to prevent this from happening. He needed a solution that would last even after his death. The answer came from Hagoromo's own sons. He had 2 children named Indra and Asura. Indra was born with natural talent and inherited powerful eyes called the Sharingan. He was a prodigy who could master techniques easily. Asura, the younger son, had no special talents at birth. He struggled to learn and had to work hard for everything he achieved. But through his efforts, and with help from others, Asura grew strong and awakened special powers of his own. Watching his younger son struggle, persevere, and ultimately succeed through cooperation and friendship inspired Hagoromo. Asura showed him that love, understanding, and working together were the true paths to peace, not just raw power or talent. This inspiration gave Hagoromo an idea for what to do about the Ten Tails. Instead of letting the monster be released as one complete being after his death, he would divide it into smaller parts. If he could split the Ten Tails into multiple beings, each one would be weaker than the whole. More importantly, he could give these new beings names and personalities, treating them as individuals rather than as weapons or monsters. Perhaps they could learn to trust humans and help humanity rather than destroy it. Hagoromo possessed a special technique called the creation of all things. This technique combined two types of chakra release that went beyond the normal 5 elemental natures. One type was called yin release, which used spiritual energy and imagination. The other was called yang release, which used physical energy and vitality. By combining yin and yang release together, Hagoromo could create form from nothingness and then breathe life into that form. He could take something that existed only in his imagination and make it real. This power was considered the ultimate expression of chakra mastery, something only a godlike being could accomplish. It was the same type of power that would later be the basis for advanced techniques like Izanagi, though those were much weaker imitations of what Hagoromo could do. Using this creation of all things technique, Hagoromo separated the Ten Tails chakra from its body. The body of the Ten Tails, an empty husk without the chakra that gave it life, was sealed away using another powerful technique. This husk was launched into space and became the moon, hanging in the sky as a permanent reminder of what had been accomplished. But the chakra itself, the actual energy and life force of the Ten Tails, was still inside Hagoromo. This was what he needed to divide. Hagoromo took the Ten Tails chakra and split it into 9 separate portions. He did not divide it equally. Some portions were larger and more powerful than others. Then, using the creation of all things technique, he gave each portion a physical form. He used his imagination to create shapes for these beings, deciding what they would look like and how they would exist in the world. Once he had created the forms, he used yang release to give them life, transforming them from mere constructs of chakra into living, breathing, thinking creatures. They were not just mindless monsters or tools. They were beings with their own personalities, their own thoughts, their own feelings. These 9 beings became known as the tailed beasts, and each one had a different number of tails corresponding to their portion of the original Ten Tails power. The beast with 1 tail was the smallest and least powerful. The beast with 9 tails was the largest and most powerful. The 9-tailed beasts that Hagoromo created had distinct appearances and personalities. The 1-tailed beast was named Shukaku. It took the form of a tanuki, a type of raccoon dog made entirely of sand. Shukaku had a short temper and acted in ways that seemed childish or even drunk. The 2-tailed beast was named Matatabi. This beast looked like a giant cat with 2 tails, and its body was made of blue flames. Unlike some of the other tailed beasts, Matatabi was polite and treated others with respect. The 3-tailed beast was named Isobu. It appeared as an enormous turtle, with a shell covered in spikes and 3 shrimp-like tails. Isobu was surprisingly gentle and timid, despite its intimidating appearance. The 4-tailed beast was named Son Goku, taking the name from the legendary Monkey King. It looked like a giant red gorilla with horns and 4 tails. Son Goku had a serious demeanor and could be tough to deal with, but it had a sense of honor. The 5-tailed beast was named Kokuo. This creature was unusual because it combined features of a horse and a dolphin, creating a unique appearance with 5 tails. The 6-tailed beast was named Saiken. It had the appearance of a giant slug with 6 tails and could use powerful acid-based attacks. The 7-tailed beast was named Chomei. This beast resembled a large beetle or insect with 6 wings and 1 actual tail, making 7 appendages total. Chomei was known for being cheerful and friendly. The 8-tailed beast was named Gyuki. It looked like a massive ox or bull with 8 tentacle-like tails instead of normal tails. Gyuki was intelligent and analytical, able to think strategically in difficult situations. Finally, the 9-tailed beast was named Kurama. This was the strongest of all the tailed beasts, appearing as an enormous fox with 9 flowing tails. Kurama was proud and considered itself superior to the other tailed beasts because of its greater power. Hagoromo gave each of these creatures a name as a sign of their individuality. In the world they lived in, having a name meant you were recognized as a being with your own identity, not just a tool or a weapon. By naming them, Hagoromo was telling these creatures that they mattered as individuals. He treated them with kindness and respect, raising them almost like they were his children. The young tailed beasts stayed with Hagoromo for a time, and he acted as a father figure to them. He taught them and cared for them. He told them that even though they were now separated into 9 different beings, they were still connected to each other. They all came from the same source, and that bond would always tie them together. Hagoromo explained that someday, in the future, they would come together again, but not in the same way they had been as the 10 Tails. When that time came, someone special would appear to show them what true power really meant. The tailed beasts respected and even loved Hagoromo. They saw him as more than just the person who created them. He was someone who treated them with genuine care. When Hagoromo's health began to fail, and they realized he would soon die, some of the tailed beasts became emotional. Kurama, despite being proud and often aloof, actually shed tears at the thought of losing the sage. This shows how deep their bond was. In later years, when humans began to hunt and capture the tailed beasts to use them as weapons, the creatures would remember Hagoromo and the kindness he had shown them. They would remember a time when at least one human had treated them as more than just monsters. The process of extracting all 9 tailed beasts from his body took an enormous toll on Hagoromo. Removing that much chakra all at once left him extremely weak and exhausted. His body was damaged by the extraction, and he was left bedridden and barely able to move. The only thing that kept him alive during this period was the life force remaining in the husk of the 10 Tails, which sustained him for several months while he slowly recovered. He never fully regained his strength after that, and it contributed to his eventual death. But Hagoromo considered this sacrifice worthwhile. He had accomplished his goal. The 10 Tails would not be released as one complete monster when he died. Instead, 9 separate beings now existed in the world, each with its own name, personality, and potential for growth. Before his death, Hagoromo did one more thing for the tailed beasts. According to some accounts, he and his followers built 9 temples in different regions of the world. These temples were meant to serve as places where the tailed beasts could live and be protected. The idea was that humans would respect these sacred places and leave the tailed beasts alone. This shows that Hagoromo understood the danger the beasts would face from humans who might want to capture and use their power. Unfortunately, Hagoromo's dream for the tailed beasts did not come to pass the way he hoped. After his death, humans did not treat the tailed beasts with the respect and kindness that the sage had shown them. Instead, they saw the beasts as sources of power to be captured and controlled. Over the centuries that followed, the 9 tailed beasts were hunted down by various ninja villages. They were sealed inside human hosts called Jinchuriki, forced to lend their power to these hosts, whether they wanted to or not. The tailed beasts were treated as weapons of war, tools to be used in conflicts between villages. This treatment made most of the tailed beasts grow to hate and distrust humans. They had known one human, Hagoromo, who treated them well, but after him came centuries of humans who only saw them as monsters or as resources to exploit. The beasts became bitter and angry, which only reinforced humans' view of them as dangerous creatures that needed to be controlled. Shukaku, sealed inside hosts from the Sand Village, developed a violent hatred for humans because of constant mistreatment. Kurama, sealed inside multiple hosts from the Leaf Village, became filled with rage and repeatedly tried to break free and destroy everything around it. Even the more gentle beasts like Isobu and Matatabi suffered under human control, their power used for purposes they never agreed to. This cycle of hatred and mistrust continued for generations, until a young ninja named Naruto Uzumaki began to change things. Naruto had Kurama sealed inside him from birth, and he spent his childhood as an outcast because people feared the fox demon within him, but Naruto refused to give in to hatred. Through determination and eventually through understanding, Naruto reached out to Kurama. Instead of treating the 9 Tails as a mere source of power or as a monster to be suppressed, Naruto tried to understand Kurama's pain and anger. He acknowledged that the tailed beast had been wronged by humans for centuries. Slowly, Naruto and Kurama developed a real friendship built on mutual respect. This friendship between a human and a tailed beast echoed what Hagoromo had hoped for when he first created the 9 beings. When the tailed beasts met Naruto and saw how he treated Kurama, they began to remember the Sage of 6 Paths. They remembered the one human who had shown them kindness and respect. Naruto proved that humans and tailed beasts could cooperate and even care for each other if they tried to understand one another. This was exactly what Hagoromo had envisioned centuries earlier when he split the 10 tails and created the 9 tailed beasts. The creation of the tailed beasts from the 10 tails represents one of the most significant events in the history of the ninja world. It shaped conflicts and politics for centuries afterward. Villages that possessed tailed beasts gained tremendous military power, which led to arms races as different villages tried to capture beasts for themselves. The first Hokage of the Leaf Village, Hashirama Senju, eventually captured several tailed beasts and distributed them among the 5 great ninja villages in an attempt to create a balance of power and promote peace. But this distribution treated the beasts as commodities to be bought and sold, rather than as living beings with their own will. The tailed beasts remembered Hagoromo's words about eventually coming together again, and this prophecy would be fulfilled during the 4th Great Ninja War. The villainous organization called Akatsuki captured all 9 tailed beasts with the intent of merging them back into the 10 tails. They succeeded in recreating the monster, and the 10 tails was reborn. But in the end, Naruto and the other ninja managed to defeat it again, and the tailed beasts were freed. After the war, most of the tailed beasts chose to live freely rather than stay sealed in human hosts. Only Kurama and Gyuki chose to remain with their Jinchuriki because they had formed genuine bonds of friendship. Looking back at what Hagoromo accomplished, his creation of the 9-tailed beasts was both a triumph and a tragedy. He successfully prevented the 10 tails from being released as one complete monster after his death. He created 9 beings with individual personalities and gave them the chance to develop relationships with humans. But he could not prevent humans from abusing these beings for centuries, treating them as weapons and monsters rather than as the intelligent creatures they were. The story of the Sage of 6 Paths and the tailed beasts teaches an important lesson about how power can corrupt and how fear can drive people to terrible actions. Hagoromo showed that it was possible to treat powerful beings with respect and kindness. The tailed beasts responded to his care by trusting him and even loving him. But later humans, frightened by the beast's power and tempted by what that power could do for them, chose control and exploitation instead of understanding and cooperation. It took someone like Naruto, who shared Hagoromo's ideals about using power to connect rather than dominate, to finally break that cycle and prove that humans and tailed beasts could be friends. The 9 tailed beasts exist because one man made a choice to divide rather than destroy, to create life rather than let a monster persist. Hagoromo Otsutsuki's legacy as the Sage of 6 Paths who split the 10 tails and created Kurama and the other 8-tailed beasts remains one of the most important foundations of the entire ninja world's history. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Next up, how Godzilla influenced the design of Naruto's giant-tailed beasts. Godzilla helped inspire Naruto's giant-tailed beasts and monster design. Masashi Kishimoto's Naruto featured some of the most powerful and terrifying creatures in anime history. The tailed beasts stood at the center of the entire story and represented living weapons of mass destruction that could level entire cities with a single attack. These gigantic chakra monsters came in 9 different forms, each with their own unique appearance and personality. From Shukaku, the one-tailed tanuki, to Kurama, the 9-tailed fox, the tailed beasts became iconic parts of the Naruto universe. Many fans might not know that Kishimoto created these monsters because of his lifelong love for Japan's most famous kaiju. The creator of Naruto has openly stated that Godzilla and other classic Japanese monster films directly inspired both the tailed beasts and the entire summoning jutsu system that brought giant creatures into the ninja world. Understanding this connection reveals how Kishimoto took inspiration from classic monster movies and transformed those ideas into something completely new for the world of shinobi. Masashi Kishimoto developed a passion for Godzilla when he was still in elementary school. He grew up watching the famous kaiju films produced by Toho Studios and dreamed of one day creating his own monster designs. In a recent interview with La Nouvelle République during a trip to France, Kishimoto explained exactly how much these monster movies meant to him as a young artist. He said that he had been passionate about Godzilla since elementary school, and that his dream was to draw monsters, so he ended up including some in his story. Kishimoto specifically mentioned 4 kaiju that he loved, and that inspired him to make the tailed beasts in Naruto. Those 4 monsters were Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, and Rodan. These creatures all came from Toho's catalog of classic kaiju films, and each possessed their own unique characteristics and personalities. The variety among these monsters showed Kishimoto that giant creatures could be more than just mindless forces of destruction. The original Godzilla film came out in 1954 and was directed by Ishiro Honda. The movie was produced and distributed by Toho Studios and introduced the world to what would become one of the most recognizable monsters in cinema history. Godzilla was designed as a massive prehistoric reptilian creature that had been awakened and empowered by nuclear radiation and nuclear testing. The film served as a metaphor for nuclear weapons and specifically referenced the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, as well as the Lucky Dragon 5 incident. These events were still fresh in the Japanese consciousness when the film was made, which gave Godzilla a deeper meaning beyond just being a monster movie. The creature represented humanity's fear of nuclear destruction and the consequences of tampering with forces beyond human control. Godzilla was portrayed as a colossal force of nature that destroyed everything in its path when it attacked Tokyo. The film showed the monster rising from the Pacific Ocean to wreak havoc on the city, in scenes that combined practical special effects with suit acting and miniature sets. The Godzilla franchise continued for decades after that original film and introduced many other kaiju characters along the way. In the early films of what became known as the Showa era, Godzilla was depicted as a villainous and destructive entity, punishing humankind for its use of nuclear weapons. Over time, Godzilla's character evolved, and the monster gradually developed into a more heroic figure who defended Japan by fighting off other more malevolent creatures. This character development showed that even giant monsters could have complex personalities and motivations. The transformation from villain to hero demonstrated that these creatures were more than just special effects spectacles. They became characters with their own arcs and relationships. Kishimoto noticed this aspect of the Toho kaiju films, and it influenced how he would later approach creating the tailed beasts. The idea that monsters could have distinct personalities and could change over time became central to how Kishimoto wrote Kurama and the other tailed beasts. Mothra first appeared in her own film in 1961 before becoming a recurring character in the Godzilla franchise. Unlike Godzilla, Mothra was typically portrayed as a benevolent creature who protected humanity rather than threatened it. The kaiju appeared as a giant moth with colorful wings and was often summoned by twin fairies called the Shobijin. Mothra's gentle nature and protective instincts made her stand out from the more aggressive monsters in the Toho universe. King Ghidorah debuted in the film Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster in 1964. The creature was portrayed as an ancient extraterrestrial entity, with 3 heads and golden scales. King Ghidorah was responsible for destroying the civilization on Venus thousands of years before the film's events, and represented pure, destructive evil. The 3-headed dragon became one of Godzilla's most famous adversaries, and appeared in multiple films throughout the franchise. Rodan first appeared in his own 1956 film directed by Ishiro Honda. The creature was depicted as a giant pteranodon that had been awakened from ancient times. Rodan possessed massive wings that could create powerful shockwaves and level buildings with the wind force alone. What made these Toho kaiju special was that each one had their own personality and character traits beyond just their physical designs. Godzilla could be fierce and territorial. Mothra showed compassion and self-sacrifice. King Ghidorah embodied malice and conquest. Rodan displayed pride and independence. These monsters weren't just mindless beasts smashing through cities. They were characters who formed alliances, held grudges, and made decisions based on their own motivations. The kaiju films showed audiences that giant monsters could have emotional depth and could interact with each other in meaningful ways. This approach to monster storytelling deeply influenced Kishimoto when he began planning Naruto. He wanted to create creatures that had the same kind of presence and personality that the Toho kaiju possessed. The tailed beasts needed to feel like actual characters rather than just obstacles for Naruto to overcome. Kishimoto explained his thought process in greater detail during a 2014 interview with Nippon that took place as the original Naruto manga was coming to an end. He revealed that the entire story of the tailed beasts started out as a simple way for him to get the fox into his manga. Kishimoto said that he loved Godzilla and just wanted to draw a monster, something big that he could place in a battle. This desire to include giant creatures in his ninja story led him to develop the summoning jutsu system. He explained that this was why he decided to introduce the Kuchiyose no Jutsu, the summoning skills that let ninja call forth the weapons they need or call a creature to their side to aid them in a fight. Kishimoto's intent from the start was to bring forth gigantic beings with these skills. The summoning jutsu became one of the most important techniques in the Naruto universe and allowed characters like Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru to call upon massive animals to fight alongside them. The influence of Godzilla can be seen throughout many aspects of Naruto's world building. The summoning jutsu brought creatures like Gamabunta, the giant toad, Katsuyu, the massive slug, and Manda, the enormous snake, into battle. These summons served a similar purpose to the kaiju in Godzilla films by creating spectacular, large-scale confrontations that towered over human characters. Just as Godzilla movies featured cities being destroyed by titanic monsters, Naruto featured ninja villages and battlefields being reshaped by the presence of these summoned creatures, for him to get the fox into his manga. Kishimoto said that he loved Godzilla and just wanted to draw a monster, something big that he could place in a battle. This desire to include giant creatures in his ninja story led him to develop the summoning jutsu system. He explained that this was why he decided to introduce the Kuchiyose no Jutsu, the summoning skills that let ninja call forth the weapons they need or call a creature to their side to aid them in a fight. Kishimoto's intent from the start was to bring forth gigantic beings with these skills. The summoning jutsu became one of the most important techniques in the Naruto universe and allowed characters like Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru to call upon massive animals to fight alongside them. The influence of Godzilla can be seen throughout many aspects of Naruto's world building. The summoning jutsu brought creatures like Gamabunta, the giant toad, Katsuyu, the massive slug, and Manda, the enormous snake, into battle. These summons served a similar purpose to the kaiju in Godzilla films by creating spectacular, large-scale confrontations that towered over human characters. Just as Godzilla movies featured cities being destroyed by titanic monsters, Naruto featured ninja villages and battlefields being reshaped by the presence of these summoned creatures. The visual spectacle of seeing a character standing on top of a giant toad's head while directing it in combat against another massive creature directly echoed the kaiju battle sequences that Kishimoto loved as a child. The summoning jutsu gave Kishimoto the framework he needed to justify having these giant monsters appear in a world primarily focused on human ninja using hand seals and jutsu. The tailed beasts took this concept even further by being permanent fixtures in the world rather than temporary summons. Each of the 9 tailed beasts possessed its own distinct design that drew inspiration from various animals and mythological creatures. Shukaku, the one-tailed beast, resembled a tanuki, which is a Japanese raccoon dog that appears in folklore. Matatabi, the two tails, took the form of a massive cat with flames covering its body. Isobu, the 3 tails, appeared as an enormous turtle with a spiked shell. Son Goku, the 4 tails, looked like a giant red gorilla. Kokuo, the 5 tails, resembled a white horse with a dolphin-like head and 5 horns. Seiken, the 6 tails, took the form of a slug with the ability to produce corrosive substances. Chomei, the 7 tails, appeared as a rhinoceros beetle with 6 wings. Gyuki, the 8 tails, looked like a massive ox with octopus tentacles. Kurama, the 9 tails, took the form of a giant red-orange fox with 9 sweeping tails. The variety in these designs reflected Kishimoto's appreciation for how Toho gave each of their kaiju unique appearances. Just as moviegoers could instantly recognize Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, and Rodan by their silhouettes, Naruto fans could immediately identify each tailed beast by their distinct shapes and features. Kishimoto put careful thought into making sure that no 2 tailed beasts looked alike, and that each one had visual elements that matched their personalities and abilities. The variety also served a practical storytelling purpose by making battles between different tailed beasts visually interesting. When Naruto entered his Kurama chakra mode to fight against other Jinchuriki, or when multiple tailed beasts appeared on screen together, audiences could follow the action because each creature looked completely different from the others. Beyond just physical appearance, Kishimoto gave each tailed beast their own personality and emotional depth. This decision came directly from observing how Toho had developed their kaiju over multiple films. Kurama started as a hateful and cynical creature who despised humanity for sealing it inside Naruto and treating it like a weapon. The Nine Tails was proud and viewed itself as the strongest of all the tailed beasts because it possessed the most tails. Over time, Naruto's kindness and determination to treat Kurama with respect gradually changed the fox's perspective. By the end of the series, Kurama had transformed from Naruto's greatest burden into his most trusted friend and ally. This character arc mirrored how Godzilla transformed from villain to hero over the course of the Showa-era films. Both characters began as threats to humanity, but eventually became protectors. Shukaku, the one-tailed beast, displayed a short-tempered and childish personality. The Tanuki took great pride in its sealing and defensive abilities and harbored a grudge against Kurama because the fox looked down on Shukaku for only having one tail. This rivalry between Shukaku and Kurama added another layer to their characterization and showed that the tailed beasts had complex relationships with each other beyond their connections to their human hosts. Gyuki, the Eight Tails, demonstrated intelligence and patience, forming a strong bond with its Jinchuriki killer bee that allowed them to work together seamlessly. Matatabi, the Two Tails, Isobu, the Three Tails, and the other tailed beasts each displayed their own temperaments and preferences. Some were more aggressive, while others showed restraint. Some harbored deep hatred for humans, while others remained neutral. These personality differences made the tailed beasts feel like actual characters rather than just power sources. The way Kishimoto portrayed the tailed beasts' relationships with humanity also reflected themes present in the Godzilla films. Both Godzilla and the tailed beasts represented powerful natural forces that humans tried to control or weaponize. In the Naruto universe, villages sealed tailed beasts into human hosts called Jinchuriki to create living weapons for warfare. The tailed beasts resented this treatment, and many of them developed hatred toward humans as a result of centuries of exploitation. This dynamic paralleled how Godzilla was awakened and empowered by human nuclear testing, and then became a threat because humanity had disturbed forces beyond its understanding. The original Godzilla film warned about the dangers of nuclear weapons, and Naruto warned about the dangers of using living beings as weapons without regard for their feelings or autonomy. Naruto's journey to befriend Kurama became one of the central storylines of the entire series. When Naruto first learned about the Nine Tails sealed inside him, he saw the fox as nothing more than a source of power to tap into during desperate situations. Kurama only offered assistance when Naruto's life was in danger, because the fox's own survival depended on keeping its host alive. Over time, Naruto began to see Kurama as more than just a power source. He learned the fox's name and began treating it with respect and kindness. Naruto acknowledged Kurama's pain from centuries of being hunted and sealed and refused to view the tailed beast as an evil monster. This gradual building of trust eventually led to Kurama willingly cooperating with Naruto and even developing genuine affection for the young ninja. Their friendship represented Kishimoto's belief that understanding and compassion could overcome hatred and prejudice. The concept of Jinchuriki added another dimension to how Kishimoto incorporated his love of monsters into Naruto. Rather than having the giant creatures only appear as external threats or summons, Kishimoto made them integral parts of his main characters. Naruto carried Kurama inside him from the day he was born. Gaara hosted Shukaku for most of his childhood. Killer Bee shared his body with Gyuki. This setup allowed Kishimoto to explore the psychological and emotional aspects of living with these powerful beings. The relationship between a Jinchuriki and their tailed beast could be antagonistic, neutral, or friendly depending on how they treated each other. Characters who viewed their tailed beasts as weapons struggled to access their full power, while characters who formed genuine bonds unlocked abilities far beyond what forceful extraction could provide. The final battle between Naruto and Sasuke at the Valley of the End showcased exactly what Kishimoto wanted to achieve by bringing Godzilla's influence into his ninja world. Naruto transformed into a massive chakra construct powered by Kurama, while Sasuke activated his complete body Susanoo, enhanced with chakra from all the other tailed beasts. The two gigantic forms clashed in a battle that destroyed the landscape and obliterated the statues of Hashirama and Madara. This kaiju-style confrontation represented the culmination of everything Kishimoto had been building toward since he first decided to include monsters in his story. The scene directly fulfilled his childhood dream of drawing giant monsters engaged in spectacular battles. The emotional weight of Naruto and Sasuke's relationship, combined with the visual spectacle of their titanic forms, created a finale that honored both Kishimoto's storytelling ambitions and his love for classic monster movies. Kishimoto's incorporation of Godzilla's influence extended beyond just the tailed beasts themselves. The entire mythology surrounding how the tailed beasts were created added depth to the Naruto universe. Hagoromo Otsutsuki, the Sage of Six Paths, split the 10 tails into 9 separate entities to prevent its power from being abused. He raised the tailed beasts and gave them names to establish their individual identities. This backstory explained why the tailed beasts possessed sentience and personalities, rather than being mindless chakra constructs. It also established that humans had a responsibility to treat these creatures with respect, rather than viewing them as tools. The sage's original vision was for humans and tailed beasts to coexist peacefully, but this dream failed when later generations began sealing the beasts into Jinchuriki for warfare. The tailed beasts' ability to communicate with each other through telepathy added another layer to their characterization. Even when sealed inside different hosts across different villages, the tailed beasts could sense each other's presence and share thoughts. This network allowed them to coordinate and share information, particularly during the Fourth Shinobi World War, when Akatsuki captured most of them. The beasts recognized that Naruto represented the fulfillment of the Sage of Six Paths prophecy about someone who would learn their names and treat them as equals rather than weapons. This collective decision to support Naruto showed that the tailed beasts possessed their own agency and could work together toward common goals, much like how Godzilla, Mothra, and Rodan sometimes formed alliances in Toho films to fight against greater threats like King Ghidorah. The long-term impact of Kishimoto's decision to draw inspiration from Godzilla can be seen in how the tailed beasts became some of the most beloved characters in Naruto. Kurama in particular evolved from being a symbol of Naruto's suffering into a representation of friendship and mutual understanding. The fox's death in the Boruto series during the battle against Ishiki Otsutsuki devastated fans because they had watched the relationship between Naruto and Kurama develop over hundreds of chapters and episodes. The emotional investment audiences had in Kurama's character demonstrated that Kishimoto had successfully achieved what he set out to do. He created monsters that felt as memorable and meaningful as the Toho kaiju he loved as a child. The tailed beasts weren't just obstacles or power-ups. They were characters with their own arcs, relationships, and significance to the story. Kishimoto's love for Godzilla and classic kaiju films shaped Naruto in fundamental ways that went beyond surface-level references. The summoning jutsu system exists because Kishimoto wanted to draw giant creatures in battle. The nine-tailed beasts exist because he loved monsters and wanted to include them in his ninja story. The distinct personalities of each tailed beast reflect how Toho gave their kaiju individual characteristics and development. The themes about respecting nature and not treating living beings as weapons echo the warnings present in the original Godzilla film. The spectacular battles between massive chakra constructs fulfill Kishimoto's childhood dream of creating his own monster fights. Every time fans watch Naruto transform into his Kurama chakra mode or see the tailed beasts gathered together, they're witnessing the influence of Japan's most famous movie monster. Godzilla helped inspire one of the most important elements of Naruto, and that inspiration resulted in some of the most memorable creatures in anime history. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have the cycle of hatred between Indra and Asura. The cycle of hatred between Indra and Asura. The story of Naruto is fundamentally about breaking cycles of hatred and violence. At the heart of this theme lies one of the most important plot revelations in the entire series. Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha were not simply rivals or friends who grew apart. They were the latest reincarnations of two brothers whose conflict had repeated itself for over 1,000 years. Indra and Asura Otsutsuki, the sons of Hagoromo, the Sage of Six Paths, started a feud that transcended death itself. Their chakra and souls continuously reincarnated into new vessels throughout history, forcing generation after generation to repeat the same tragic battle between brothers. This cycle of reincarnation created the foundation for some of the most devastating wars in the shinobi world. Understanding this cycle requires looking at where it all began, how it perpetuated itself through history, and why Naruto and Sasuke were finally able to break free from a destiny that had claimed countless lives before them. Hagoromo Otsutsuki lived thousands of years before the events of Naruto took place. He was one of the two sons of Kaguya Otsutsuki, who brought chakra to Earth after consuming the chakra fruit from the god tree. Hagoromo and his twin brother Hamura eventually defeated their mother when she became corrupted by power and attempted to take back all the chakra in the world. After sealing Kaguya away, Hagoromo remained on Earth, while Hamura went to the moon to guard their mother's prison. Hagoromo believed that chakra should be used to connect people and create peace through understanding. He created a philosophy and practice called ninshu, which was meant to be a spiritual way of using chakra to link people's hearts together. His vision was for humanity to achieve peace through cooperation and mutual understanding rather than through violence and domination. Hagoromo had two sons who would inherit his legacy and his power, but they would take his teachings in completely opposite directions. Indra Otsutsuki was Hagoromo's older son. From birth, Indra possessed exceptional natural talent and power. He inherited his father's powerful eyes, which manifested as the Sharingan, a devolved version of Hagoromo's Rinnegan. Indra was a genius who mastered techniques with ease and possessed incredible strength even as a young man. He believed that peace could only be achieved through power and order. In Indra's view, the world needed a strong leader who could force people to behave peacefully through overwhelming might. He developed ninjutsu by weaponizing chakra, turning his father's spiritual practice into a tool for combat. Indra valued independence and self-reliance above all else. He believed that depending on others was weakness and that true strength came from individual power. This philosophy would eventually become the foundation of what later generations would call the curse of hatred that plagued the Uchiha clan. Asura Otsutsuki was Hagoromo's younger son. Unlike his older brother, Asura was born with no special talents or abilities. He struggled to accomplish even basic tasks that came naturally to Indra. Despite his lack of natural gifts, Asura possessed a kind heart and valued cooperation with others. He believed that true strength came from working together, and that love and friendship were the keys to achieving lasting peace. Where Indra relied on his own power, Asura learned to depend on his friends and comrades. Through hard work, determination, and the support of those around him, Asura gradually grew stronger. He eventually inherited physical energy and life force from his father, along with an aptitude for Six Paths Senjutsu. His philosophy centered on the idea that people needed to connect with each other and share their burdens rather than trying to shoulder everything alone. This belief system would later evolve into what Hashirama Senju called the Will of Fire. When Hagoromo grew old and approached death, he had to choose which of his sons would inherit Ninshu and carry on his legacy. Most people expected him to choose Indra, who was clearly the more talented and powerful of the two brothers. However, Hagoromo chose Asura instead. The Sage of Six Paths recognized that Indra's focus on individual power and control through force would not lead to the kind of peace he envisioned for the world. Asura's belief in cooperation and love aligned much more closely with Hagoromo's original vision. This decision devastated Indra, who felt entitled to his father's inheritance. He believed that his superior talents and abilities made him the obvious choice. The rejection filled Indra with jealousy, anger, and hatred toward his younger brother. Black Zetsu, a creation of Kaguya Otsutsuki designed to eventually resurrect her, manipulated these feelings and encouraged Indra's descent into darkness. Indra refused to accept his father's decision. He challenged Asura and attempted to take by force what he felt should have been his birthright. Asura tried to reach out to his older brother and convince him to abandon his hatred, but Indra would not listen. The two brothers fought in a massive battle where Indra manifested an enormous chakra construct, while Asura created his own battle avatar with help from the villagers who shared their chakra with him. Asura combined wood release with six paths senjutsu and managed to defeat his older brother, forcing Indra to retreat. Despite winning the battle, Asura could not change his brother's heart. On his deathbed, Hagoromo received one final visit from Indra, who boldly declared that he would destroy everything his father had built. Indra vowed to continue his fight against Asura's ideals for as many lifetimes as it took. Asura comforted his father and made his own vow in response. He promised to reincarnate alongside Indra for as long as necessary, in hopes that one day they would finally be able to end their conflict peacefully. The chakra and souls of both brothers continued to exist even after their physical bodies died. This created a reincarnation cycle that would last for over a millennium. Their chakra continuously reincarnated into new vessels among their descendants. Indra's lineage eventually became the Uchiha clan, while Asura's lineage split into both the Senju and Uzumaki clans. Neither the Uchiha nor the Senju understood why they hated each other so deeply. The knowledge of Indra and Asura had been lost to history, but the conflict between their descendants continued generation after generation. According to Black Zetsu, the reincarnations of Indra and Asura were almost always in conflict with each other and rarely worked together. The cycle did not resume until both current reincarnations had died. After one pair of reincarnations died, the chakra would eventually find new vessels, and the battle would begin again. This pattern repeated itself countless times throughout the Warring States period, when shinobi clans fought endless wars against each other. The most famous reincarnations before Naruto and Sasuke were Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha. These two were born during the Warring States period, when the average lifespan of a shinobi was only 30 years because even children were forced to fight and die in clan warfare. Hashirama and Madara met as young boys by a river without knowing each other's clan affiliations. Both had lost brothers to the constant fighting, and both dreamed of a world where children would not have to die in battle. They became friends and spent their free time together talking, playing, and imagining a future where peace was possible. They practiced skipping stones across the river and shared their hopes that one day the killing would stop. Eventually, they discovered each other's true identities. Hashirama was a Senju, and Madara was an Uchiha. Their clans were mortal enemies who had killed each other's family members for generations. Despite this revelation, Hashirama refused to fight his friend. He set aside his duty to kill Madara because he valued their friendship too much. Madara initially felt the same way, but after his younger brother Izuna nearly died in battle against the Senju, Madara made a different choice. He decided that their dream of peace was impossible as long as they remained friends. Madara ended their friendship so that when they next met on the battlefield, he would be able to kill Hashirama without hesitation. The war between the Senju and Uchiha continued for years. Both Hashirama and Madara grew into legendary warriors who led their respective clans. Madara's brother Izuna was eventually killed by Hashirama's younger brother Tobirama during one of their many battles. Before dying, Izuna gave Madara his eyes, which allowed Madara to awaken the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. The deaths of their brothers on both sides convinced Hashirama and Madara that the cycle of violence had to end. After years of fighting each other, Hashirama offered Madara a truce. When Madara questioned whether he could trust the Senju, Hashirama prepared to kill himself to prove his sincerity. Madara stopped him and acknowledged his courage. The two former friends agreed to work together again. With the help of their clans, Hashirama and Madara founded Konohagakure, the first hidden village in the shinobi world. It was actually Madara who named the village, choosing the name based on the forest surrounding the area. Their creation of Konoha represented a revolutionary change in how shinobi organized themselves. Instead of endless clan warfare, multiple clans would live together in one village and work toward common goals. For a brief time, it seemed like Hashirama and Madara had broken the cycle. They had achieved their childhood dream of creating a place where children would not have to fight and die. The village thrived as clans that had been enemies for generations learned to cooperate. However, the peace between Hashirama and Madara did not last. When it came time to choose the first Hokage who would lead and protect the village, a democratic process was held. Hashirama wanted Madara to become Hokage, believing that giving him that position would help unite the village and prove that the Uchiha were trusted equals. Madara's younger brother Tobirama insisted on a democratic election instead of simply appointing Madara. The villagers chose Hashirama to be the first Hokage instead of Madara. This decision made Madara feel betrayed and excluded. He believed that the Senju clan would inevitably dominate the village and that the Uchiha would be marginalized. Madara felt that the leadership position would eventually go to Tobirama rather than to him, which would end badly for his clan. His fears about being pushed aside, combined with his natural inclination toward the curse of hatred that affected all Uchiha. Madara's distrust grew until he could no longer believe in Hashirama's vision of peace. Madara eventually left Konohagakure and attempted to convince other Uchiha to follow him. When none of his clans supported his rebellion, Madara became even more isolated and bitter. He later returned to the village with the nine-tailed fox Kurama under his control, intending to destroy Konoha. Hashirama had no choice but to fight his former friend. The two clashed at what would become known as the Valley of the End. The destructive power of their battle carved out the landscape and created the valley that would be memorialized with giant statues of both warriors. Hashirama used his top transformed Buddha technique combined with his wood release abilities. Madara controlled Kurama and used his complete body Susanoo. The battle ended with Hashirama victorious and Madara apparently dead, though Madara had actually used the forbidden Izanagi technique to survive. Even in his final moments, Hashirama tried to reason with Madara and bring him back, but Madara refused to abandon his belief that peace through power was the only way forward. Before going into hiding, Madara took some of Hashirama's flesh and later implanted it into his own wounds. This act caused a portion of Asura's chakra to merge with Indra's chakra within Madara, which eventually led to him awakening the Rinnegan. The cycle of Indra and Asura's reincarnation did not resume immediately after Hashirama died. The reincarnation process required both of the current reincarnates to be dead before the chakra could pass to new vessels. Madara lived for many more decades in hiding before his eventual death. Only after Madara's second death did the transmigration cycle resume. The chakra of Indra and Asura found their next vessels in two boys who would be born around the same time. Naruto Uzumaki became the inheritor of Asura's chakra and will. He was a descendant of Asura through the Uzumaki clan, which had distant relations to the Senju. Sasuke Uchiha became the inheritor of Indra's chakra and will as a member of the Uchiha clan. Like all the reincarnations before them, Naruto and Sasuke did not initially know about their connection to the ancient brothers. They simply felt drawn to each other as rivals and friends without understanding why. Naruto and Sasuke were placed on the same team along with Sakura Haruno under the leadership of Kakashi Hatake. They formed Team 7 and went on missions together. Naruto admired Sasuke's natural talent and wanted to prove himself as equally strong. Sasuke initially viewed Naruto as an annoying rival, but gradually came to see him as an important friend. When Sasuke's older brother Itachi returned to the village, it triggered Sasuke's desire for revenge and made him realize he was not strong enough to defeat Itachi yet. Sasuke's pursuit of power eventually led him to leave Konoha to train under Orochimaru. Naruto tried to stop him at the Valley of the End in their first major battle at that location. Sasuke won that confrontation and left the village to seek greater strength. This marked the beginning of their conflict, though neither understood at the time that they were repeating a pattern that had played out countless times before. Years later, after the Fourth Shinobi World War ended with the defeat of Kaguya Otsutsuki, Naruto and Sasuke learned the truth about their connection. Hagoromo's spirit appeared before them and revealed that they were reincarnations of his sons. He granted both of them a portion of his power in hopes that this generation would finally break the cycle. Hagoromo wanted Sasuke to overcome the hatred that had consumed every Indra reincarnation before him. However, even after fighting together against Madara and Kaguya, Sasuke remained convinced that the world needed someone to shoulder all the hatred alone. He planned to kill all the tailed beasts and the current Kage leaders to concentrate all power and hatred onto himself. In Sasuke's view, this was the only way to achieve lasting peace, because it would give the world a common enemy to unite against. Naruto completely disagreed with this plan. He believed that people needed to share their burdens together rather than relying on one person to carry everything alone. The two traveled to the Valley of the End for their final battle. This choice of location was symbolic because it was where Hashirama and Madara had fought their last battle as the previous reincarnations. Naruto and Sasuke's conflict destroyed much of the valley and obliterated most of the giant statues of Hashirama and Madara. They used their most powerful techniques against each other. Sasuke absorbed the chakra of all 9-tailed beasts into his complete body Susanoo to create what became known as Indra Susanoo. Naruto combined 3 Kurama avatars into a single massive construct with 3 faces and 6 arms called Asura Kurama mode. The 2 chakra avatars clashed repeatedly until both combatants were completely exhausted. Their final exchange of Rasengan and Chidori destroyed both of their dominant arms. They lay on the ground, unable to move, facing each other as the sun rose over the valley. In those final moments, something different happened compared to all the previous reincarnations. Sasuke admitted defeat and acknowledged that Naruto's way was correct. He realized that he had been wrong to think he needed to shoulder everything alone. Naruto's persistent refusal to give up on their friendship finally reached Sasuke's heart. Sasuke understood that connections with others were not a source of weakness, but rather the true source of strength. He accepted Naruto's ideals about achieving peace through love and cooperation, instead of through power and control. This acceptance marked the first time in over 1,000 years that an Indra reincarnation had overcome the cycle of hatred. By choosing to believe in Naruto and embrace their bond as friends rather than enemies, Sasuke broke free from the destiny that had claimed every Indra before him. Naruto succeeded in Asura's ultimate goal of finally ending the feud between the 2 bloodlines. The statues of Hashirama and Madara had been almost completely destroyed during Naruto and Sasuke's battle. Only their hands remained standing. By coincidence, these remaining hands had fallen into a position that formed the seal of reconciliation, which shinobi use to show that 2 people have made peace after a conflict. This symbolic image represented how Naruto and Sasuke had finally accomplished what Hashirama and Madara could not. The bitter rivalry between Indra and Asura, which had continued through the Senju and Uchiha clans for centuries, finally came to an end. The cycle of reincarnation presumably ended as well, since the original purpose for that cycle had been fulfilled. Indra and Asura could finally rest in peace, knowing that their reincarnations had found the reconciliation that had eluded them for so long. The revelation that Naruto and Sasuke were reincarnations of Indra and Asura added new layers of meaning to their entire relationship. Everything they had experienced together, from their time as teammates on Team 7 to their final battle, had been influenced by the chakra and will of the ancient brothers living within them. However, this did not mean that Naruto and Sasuke were simply puppets of destiny. What made their story significant was that they succeeded where every previous reincarnation had failed. They chose friendship over hatred, despite having every reason to remain enemies. Naruto never gave up on saving Sasuke, even when everyone else told him it was impossible. Sasuke eventually chose to trust Naruto, even though the curse of hatred pushed him toward isolation and vengeance. Their choices broke a cycle that had seemed unbreakable. The conflict that began with 2 brothers thousands of years ago finally ended because 2 young shinobi refused to let hatred and destiny control their future. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to The Secret of the Uchiha Curse of Hatred. The Secret of the Uchiha Curse of Hatred. The Uchiha clan's Curse of Hatred stands as one of the most tragic and misunderstood aspects of the Naruto series, and it all comes down to how their brains are wired differently from everyone else in the shinobi world. Tobirama Senju, the second Hokage, was the first person to publicly identify and name this phenomenon, though his explanation came across as prejudiced to many who heard it. What made Tobirama's assessment controversial was that he was calling out a genetic predisposition toward darkness in an entire clan, which sounds discriminatory on the surface. The reality turned out to be far more complex and ultimately validated much of what Tobirama observed, even if his delivery and political approach were questionable. The curse begins with love, which seems counterintuitive when discussing something called a curse of hatred. The Uchiha experience love more intensely than other people because of unique chakra pathways connected to their brain. Tobirama explained that the Uchiha possess exceptionally strong spiritual energy, meaning their emotions run deeper and their attachments form more powerfully than the average person. When an Uchiha loves someone, whether it's family, friends, or their village, that love burns with an intensity that most people cannot comprehend. This passionate nature made many Uchiha exceptional protectors and loyal companions, which is why the clan produced so many powerful shinobi who were willing to die for their beliefs. The problem emerges when that love is violated or destroyed. When an Uchiha loses someone they care about deeply, their brain releases a special chakra that affects their optic nerves. This is the biological mechanism behind the Sharingan's awakening and evolution. The trauma of loss literally rewires their brain and eyes, granting them the visual prowess that made the clan famous. Every major Sharingan evolution in the series happened because of devastating emotional trauma tied to love and loss. Sasuke awakened his Sharingan watching his parents get murdered by Itachi. Obito awakened his Sharingan watching Kakashi and Rin in danger. Itachi's eyes evolved further after Shisui's death. Madara reached new heights after losing his brothers. The pattern was absolutely consistent throughout the entire series. Tobirama's concern was not about the Sharingan itself, but about what happened to an Uchiha's mind after experiencing that kind of trauma. The same brain chemistry that produced the Sharingan also made the Uchiha vulnerable to being consumed by hatred. The loss that awakened their eyes also planted seeds of darkness in their hearts. Tobirama observed that Uchiha, who lost loved ones, often became twisted, obsessive, and dangerous. Their intense love transformed into equally intense hatred, and their newfound power gave them the means to act on that hatred in destructive ways. He noted that throughout history, Uchiha, who awakened the Sharingan through trauma, often ended up turning against the village or becoming threats to peace. The curse was not just a psychological pattern, but a self-reinforcing cycle. An Uchiha would love deeply, lose that love, awaken the Sharingan, and then fixate on their pain. The Sharingan's power let them remember everything perfectly, meaning they could replay their trauma in crystal clear detail forever. This photographic memory of their worst moments kept the wounds fresh and the hatred burning. The more they dwelled on their loss, the darker they became, and the more their eyes evolved. Stronger hatred led to stronger eyes, which many Uchiha began pursuing deliberately. The power became addictive, and some Uchiha started viewing emotional pain as a path to strength, rather than something to heal from. Madara Uchiha represented the curse's ultimate expression. He lost all his brothers during the Warring States period, with only Izuna surviving into adulthood. When Izuna died, Madara took his eyes and awakened the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. But the power came with complete emotional devastation. Madara loved his clan and dreamed of protecting them, but the constant loss hardened him into someone consumed by the need to create a perfect world where loss was impossible. His solution was the infinite Tsukuyomi, a genjutsu that would trap everyone in dreams where they never had to experience pain. The plan was born from love twisted into obsessive control, which perfectly demonstrated how the curse operated. Black Zetsu understood the curse better than anyone because he had been manipulating it for 1,000 years. As Kaguya's will made manifest, Black Zetsu spent centuries observing the Uchiha and learned exactly how to exploit their emotional vulnerabilities. He fed Madara lies about the Sage of Six Paths and the Stone Tablet, knowing that Madara's pain made him desperate for answers and solutions. Black Zetsu knew that an Uchiha drowning in hatred would grasp at any ideology that promised to end suffering, even if that ideology required horrific sacrifices. The curse made the Uchiha predictable in their darkness, which is why Black Zetsu's manipulations worked so consistently across generations. Obito Uchiha's fall illustrated how quickly the curse could corrupt even the gentlest soul. Before Rin's death, Obito was the complete opposite of the typical Uchiha personality. He was warm, optimistic, emotional in healthy ways, and believed in his friends above all else. He represented what an Uchiha could be without the curse's influence. Then he watched Kakashi's Chidori pierce through Rin's chest, and everything Obito was died in that moment. The boy who wanted to become Hokage to protect everyone transformed overnight into someone who wanted to destroy the world. He adopted Madara's plan wholesale and spent over a decade orchestrating a global war. The speed of his transformation showed how vulnerable the Uchiha were when their love was weaponized against them. Sasuke's journey explored the curse from every angle because he experienced it in stages. He awakened the Sharingan during the Uchiha massacre, but remained relatively stable emotionally for years. His hatred toward Itachi was intense, but it gave him purpose and direction without completely consuming him. The curse's grip tightened after he killed Itachi and learned the truth about the massacre. Discovering that his beloved brother was actually a hero who sacrificed everything for the village broke something fundamental in Sasuke. His hatred redirected toward Konoha, the system that forced Itachi into an impossible choice. Then he learned about the Sage of Six Paths, the Uchiha history, and the cycle of hatred, which radicalized him further. By the war's end, Sasuke concluded that the only way to break the cycle was to kill all the Kagis and rule through fear as an immortal dictator. His reasoning was logical within the framework of his pain, which showed how the curse distorted even brilliant minds. Itachi understood the curse better than any Uchiha except possibly Madara because he saw it from the outside while experiencing it personally. He awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan after Shisui's death, felt the pull toward darkness, and consciously chose to resist it. Itachi's entire character was built around fighting against the curse that claimed so many of his clansmen. He recognized that the Uchiha clan's obsession with power and their growing resentment toward Konoha were symptoms of the curse operating collectively. The clan's pride had transformed into paranoia and bitterness after being relocated following the Nine Tails attack. Itachi saw his people spiraling exactly as Tobirama predicted, and he made the horrific choice to end the cycle by eliminating the clan entirely. His reasoning was that sacrificing one generation of Uchiha was better than letting the curse claim them and potentially destroy the village. The curse was not absolute destiny, which became the series' crucial message about the Uchiha legacy. Itachi proved that understanding the curse gave Uchiha the power to resist it through conscious choice. Shisui Uchiha similarly rejected the curse's pull and chose to sacrifice himself rather than let his power be misused during the coup. These examples demonstrated that awareness and strong moral conviction could overcome genetic predisposition. The curse was real and dangerous, but it was not insurmountable for Uchiha with sufficient support systems and clear purpose beyond personal pain. Sasuke's eventual redemption represented the curse being broken through connection rather than isolation. Throughout most of the series, Sasuke dealt with his trauma alone, which let the curse fester and grow. Every time he isolated himself, his darkness intensified. The turning point came when Naruto refused to give up on him despite everything Sasuke had done. Naruto's stubborn insistence on maintaining their bond, even after Sasuke tried to kill him multiple times, provided the emotional anchor Sasuke needed to step back from the abyss. The final battle at the Valley of the End was not really about physical combat, but about Sasuke confronting whether connection or isolation was the path forward. When he finally accepted Naruto's friendship and returned to the village, Sasuke broke the curse's hold on him. The biological mechanism behind the curse explained why it was so powerful, but also why it could be overcome. The special chakra that affected the Uchiha brain responded to emotional stimuli, which meant positive emotions could theoretically counteract negative ones if they were strong enough. The problem was that loss and trauma naturally felt more intense and immediate than love and hope, especially after the Sharingan awakened. The eye itself became a constant reminder of pain, making it difficult to move forward. However, Uchiha, who maintained strong bonds and received genuine support, could balance the darkness with light. The curse thrived in isolation but weakened in community. Tobirama's approach to the curse was pragmatic but ultimately flawed because he treated the Uchiha as potential threats rather than people who needed support. By creating the Uchiha police force and keeping the clan under subtle surveillance, he inadvertently reinforced the isolation that made the curse worse. The Uchiha felt mistrusted and separated from the village, which fed their resentment and made them more vulnerable to the curse's influence. Tobirama understood the problem correctly, but his solution of containment and observation actually accelerated the cycle he was trying to prevent. A more effective approach would have been integration and emotional support, though whether the village could have provided that, given the political realities of the time, remains questionable. The curse's existence raised uncomfortable questions about free will and responsibility that the series never fully resolved. Were Uchiha like Madara and Obito victims of their biology, or were they still responsible for their choices despite their genetic predisposition toward darkness? The story suggested that the curse explained their vulnerability, but did not excuse their actions. Sasuke was still held accountable for his crimes, even though everyone understood the trauma that drove him. Itachi chose to bear the burden of genocide, even though he understood the curse's role in the clan's radicalization. The series ultimately argued that understanding the curse was necessary for compassion and prevention, but it could not be used as an excuse for atrocity. The curse's resolution came through Sasuke and Naruto, establishing a new precedent for how the shinobi world handled the Uchiha legacy. Instead of fearing the Sharingan and isolating those who possessed it, The next generation treated it as a gift that required responsibility and support. Sasuke's decision to have a family despite the risks showed that he believed the curse could be managed across generations if handled correctly. Sarada, growing up in a relatively stable environment without the trauma that defined previous Uchiha generations, suggested that the curse was environmental as much as genetic. The cycle could be broken not by eliminating the Uchiha, but by eliminating the conditions that activated their darkest potential. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to why the Byakugan was considered superior to the Sharingan historically. Why the Byakugan was considered superior to the Sharingan. Historically, the Byakugan's historical reputation as superior to the Sharingan was rooted in practical battlefield utility and the stability of the clan that wielded it. Kakashi Hatake stated directly during the Chunin exams that the Byakugan was considered Konoha's strongest dojutsu, which surprised many fans given how much focus the Sharingan received throughout the series. This assessment reflected the conventional wisdom within the shinobi world, before the Uchiha clan's massacre and before the true extent of the Sharingan's evolution became widely known. The comparison between these two dojutsu revealed fundamental differences in how the shinobi world valued immediate practical benefits versus raw power potential. The Byakugan's most obvious advantage was its field of vision, which gave users near-perfect awareness of their surroundings. Hyuga clan members could see in a complete 360-degree sphere around their body, with only a small blind spot near the first thoracic vertebra. This meant ambushes were nearly impossible against a Byakugan user who was paying attention. In contrast, the Sharingan provided enhanced perception and predictive abilities but still operated within normal human visual range. A Sharingan user had to look at something to analyze it, while a Byakugan user could observe threats from any direction simultaneously. This fundamental difference made the Byakugan vastly superior for reconnaissance, guard duty, and defensive operations. The range of Byakugan vision extended far beyond normal eyesight or even the Sharingan's enhanced perception. Neji Hyuga could see targets over 800 meters away during the Sasuke retrieval arc, and this was before he fully matured as a shinobi. Hinata eventually developed the ability to see over 10 kilometers in specific directions during the Fourth Shinobi World War. This long-range vision made Byakugan users invaluable for scouting missions and battlefield intelligence gathering. A single Byakugan user could monitor enemy troop movements, identify threats before they became immediate dangers, and provide commanders with strategic information that would otherwise require multiple scouts or surveillance teams. The Sharingan offered no comparable long-range capability. The Byakugan's ability to perceive chakra pathways and the Tenketsu points within the human body created unique combat applications that the Sharingan could not replicate. Hyuga fighters could see the entire chakra network inside an opponent's body, identifying exactly where to strike to disrupt chakra flow or shut down specific bodily functions. The Gentle Fist fighting style was built entirely around this ability, allowing Hyuga clan members to defeat opponents without causing external damage. They could end fights by sealing Tenketsu points and cutting off an enemy's ability to use chakra, which was effectively crippling a shinobi without necessarily killing them. This precision made the Byakugan extremely valuable for capture missions and situations where killing was not the desired outcome. The Byakugan's chakra perception extended beyond seeing pathways to identifying different types of chakra and detecting genjutsu. Byakugan users could see when someone was trapped in an illusion because they could observe the disruption in their chakra flow. They could distinguish between real bodies and clones because clone techniques use chakra differently than living tissue. They could identify when someone was using a transformation jutsu by seeing through the chakra manipulation required to maintain the disguise. These detection capabilities made the Byakugan a comprehensive counter to many common shinobi techniques, whereas the Sharingan's genjutsu detection required the user to recognize they were under an illusion first. The X-ray vision component of the Byakugan provided tactical advantages in various scenarios beyond combat. Hyuga clan members could see through solid objects, which meant walls, terrain, and obstacles did not limit their perception. During the Chunin exam's written test, Hinata offered to help Naruto cheat by reading other students' papers through multiple desks and bodies. In urban combat or indoor environments, this ability eliminated the advantage of cover and concealment that opponents might normally rely on. The Byakugan essentially eliminated blind corners and hidden spaces, making it extraordinarily difficult to hide anything from a skilled user. The Hyuga clan's structure and stability contributed significantly to the Byakugan's reputation compared to the Uchiha's turbulent history. The Hyuga maintained their position as one of Konoha's noble clans without the internal strife and eventual destruction that plagued the Uchiha. The main family and branch family system was cruel and created significant internal tensions, but it never threatened the village's stability the way Uchiha conflicts did. The Hyuga consistently produced reliable shinobi who served the village without dramatic incidents of betrayal or defection. This stability made the Byakugan politically safer than the Sharingan from the village leadership's perspective. The curse seal system employed by the Hyuga main family demonstrated control over their bloodline limit that the Uchiha never established. Branch family members received the curse seal to prevent their Byakugan from falling into enemy hands and to ensure loyalty to the main family. While this practice was ethically questionable, it meant the Byakugan never ended up in enemy possession through defection or death in the field. Every Byakugan user who died had their eyes destroyed automatically or recovered by the clan. The Sharingan, by contrast, was transplanted into Kakashi, stolen by Danzo, and taken by Obito after faking his death. The Hyuga's protective measures kept their bloodline limit secure in a way the Uchiha never managed. The Sharingan's power scaling throughout the series revealed that historical assessments were based on incomplete information about what the eye could actually do. Early in the series, the Sharingan was known for enhanced perception, copying techniques, and casting genjutsu. These abilities were impressive, but relatively limited in scope. The existence of the Mangekyo Sharingan was not common knowledge, and the techniques it granted were considered myths or legends rather than documented reality. Abilities like Amaterasu, Tsukuyomi, Susanoo, and Kamui represented power levels that completely exceeded anything the standard Byakugan could accomplish, but most shinobi were unaware these abilities existed. The practical accessibility of Byakugan abilities versus Sharingan evolution played a major role in historical assessments. Every Hyuga who activated their Byakugan gained access to the full suite of basic abilities immediately. There was no equivalent to Tomoe stages that required combat experience and emotional trauma to evolve. A young Hyuga with a newly activated Byakugan could already see 360 degrees, perceive chakra pathways, and utilize the clan's fighting style effectively. The Sharingan required significant development just to reach 3 Tomoe maturity, and the gap between a 1 Tomoe Sharingan and a 3 Tomoe version was substantial in terms of capability. The chakra cost differential favored the Byakugan significantly for extended operations. Hyuga clan members with innate Byakugan could maintain their dojutsu for extended periods without significant chakra drain. The eye was always active to some degree, and could be engaged more fully when needed without exhaustive cost. The Sharingan, especially when used by non-Uchiha like Kakashi, consumed enormous amounts of chakra and could not be deactivated if it was transplanted. Even Uchiha users found that extensive Sharingan use, particularly when copying techniques or casting powerful genjutsu, drained their reserves quickly. For long missions or extended combat, the Byakugan's efficiency made it more practical. The Byakugan's advantages in team coordination and support roles elevated its strategic value above the Sharingan's individual combat prowess. A Byakugan user in a team could monitor all teammates simultaneously while tracking enemy positions and movements across vast distances. They could warn of ambushes, coordinate positioning, identify wounded allies, and provide real-time battlefield intelligence to commanders. The Sharingan excelled at individual combat effectiveness, but did not offer the same team support capabilities. In military operations where coordination and information were critical, the Byakugan's contributions to overall mission success often exceeded what a Sharingan user could provide. The medical applications of Byakugan vision were recognized but underutilized in the series. The ability to see the chakra pathway system and internal organs with perfect clarity should have made Byakugan users exceptional medical ninja. They could diagnose internal injuries, identify chakra pathway damage, and guide surgical procedures with precision that no other dojutsu could match. While this potential was not fully explored in canon, the medical corps would logically value Byakugan users highly for complex cases. The Sharingan offered no comparable medical applications beyond potentially copying medical techniques. The gentle fist style's effectiveness against powerful opponents demonstrated the Byakugan's combat potential when used by skilled practitioners. Neji Hyuga defeated numerous opponents by exploiting his ability to attack their chakra network directly. His fight against Kidomaru showed how the Byakugan could overcome disadvantages through superior perception and precise strikes. Hinata's development throughout the series demonstrated that Byakugan users could continue growing more effective without requiring traumatic evolution like the Sharingan demanded. The fighting style had a high skill ceiling that rewarded training and experience rather than emotional suffering. The historical context of the Warring States period likely influenced the Byakugan's reputation positively compared to the Sharingan. During that era, the Uchiha's power came with the clan's unpredictable nature and the curse of hatred that made them dangerous allies. The Hyuga offered reliable battlefield support and intelligence gathering without the risk of betrayal or emotional instability. Village founders would have valued the consistency and dependability the Byakugan provided over the explosive but unpredictable power the Sharingan offered. Political considerations favored the clan that was stable over the clan that produced occasional prodigies alongside frequent tragedies. The Sharingan's copying ability, while famous, had practical limitations that reduced its utility compared to the Byakugan's universal applications. Copying techniques required seeing them performed, understanding the principles involved, and having sufficient chakra control to replicate them. Many techniques were bloodline limits or required specific chakra natures that the Sharingan user might not possess. Kakashi's reputation as the copy ninja was impressive, but he could not copy every technique he encountered. The Byakugan's abilities worked against any opponent regardless of their techniques or fighting style, making it more universally applicable across different combat scenarios. The revelation of the Rinnegan's origins and the Sharingan's connection to the Sage of Six Paths changed perceptions dramatically, but this information was not historically available. Ancient shinobi knew the Uchiha and Hyuga were both descended from powerful ancestors, but the specific connection between the Sharingan, Mangekyo Sharingan, and Rinnegan was lost to history. The stone tablet in the Uchiha shrine contained this information, but it was kept secret and had been manipulated by Black Zetsu. Without understanding the Sharingan's true evolutionary potential, historical assessments based the comparison on observed capabilities rather than theoretical maximum power. The Tenseigan's existence suggested the Byakugan also had evolutionary potential that was not commonly known during the main series. The last movie revealed that Byakugan users could potentially evolve their eyes into the Tenseigan under specific circumstances involving Otsutsuki chakra. This evolution granted powers comparable to high-level Sharingan abilities, including control over gravity and tremendous destructive force. The rarity of this evolution meant it did not factor into historical assessments, but it indicated that the Byakugan's power ceiling was higher than commonly understood, just like the Sharingan's true potential was hidden. The psychological stability required to effectively use each dojutsu favored the Byakugan in terms of producing consistent results. Byakugan users needed training and discipline but did not require emotional trauma to unlock their eyes' full basic capabilities. The Sharingan's evolution through loss and hatred meant that the most powerful Uchiha were often the most psychologically damaged. From a village's perspective, investing in Byakugan users produced reliable shinobi who grew stronger through training. Investing in Uchiha produced either moderate fighters with basic Sharingan or incredibly powerful but potentially unstable individuals who had suffered enormous trauma. The historical assessment of Byakugan's superiority ultimately reflected practical military and political considerations rather than pure power scaling. The Byakugan was superior for the majority of shinobi operations that required intelligence gathering, team coordination, defensive operations, and consistent performance. The Sharingan's true power lay in its extreme evolution potential, which produced individuals capable of world-altering techniques but at enormous personal and political cost. For village leadership evaluating bloodline limits historically, the Byakugan offered better return on investment for typical missions and posed fewer risks to village stability. The perception only changed when Sharingan users like Itachi, Obito, and Sasuke demonstrated abilities that exceeded anything the Byakugan could match. revealing that the historical assessment had been based on incomplete information about what the Sharingan could become. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have the real meaning behind the Will of Fire. The Will of Fire represented Konoha's founding philosophy that transformed shinobi from isolated clan warriors into a unified village community willing to sacrifice for each other. Hashirama Senju created this concept when he established Konoha alongside Madara Uchiha, envisioning a place where shinobi did not have to send children to die in clan conflicts. The philosophy centered on the idea that everyone in the village was family, and previous generations sacrificed themselves to protect the next generation, who would then carry that torch forward. This cycle of protection and inheritance formed the core meaning behind the Will of Fire, distinguishing Konoha's ideology from other hidden villages. Hashirama's original vision emerged from personal tragedy during the Warring States period. He lost multiple brothers to constant clan warfare, watching children die before reaching adulthood because clans used them as expendable soldiers. His friendship with Madara, formed before they knew their clan affiliations, showed him that shinobi from different clans could connect as people rather than enemies. When they finally created Konoha, Hashirama wanted to build something fundamentally different from the clan system. Instead of Senju protecting Senju and Uchiha protecting Uchiha, everyone would protect the village as a whole, and the village would protect all its members regardless of their birth clan. The metaphor of fire was deliberately chosen because fire spreads from one source to another, continuing indefinitely as long as someone carries it forward. Hiruzen Sarutobi explained this concept explicitly during his final battle with Orochimaru, stating that where leaves dance, fire burns, and that fire's shadow illuminates the village and causes new leaves to sprout. The leaves represented individual shinobi who would eventually fall, but their sacrifice would fertilize the ground for new growth. The fire was the village's spirit and determination, passed from teacher to student, parent to child, and generation to generation. As long as someone carried that flame forward, the village would never truly die, regardless of how many individuals fell. Tobirama Senju's interpretation of the Will of Fire focused heavily on institutional loyalty and village supremacy over clan identity. As the second Hokage, Tobirama created many of the systems that made Konoha function as a unified military force rather than a coalition of clans. He established the academy to train all village children together, created the Anbu for sensitive operations requiring absolute loyalty, and structured the shinobi ranks to emphasize village hierarchy over clan standing. Tobirama believed the Will of Fire meant subordinating personal and clan interests to village security. His approach was more pragmatic and sometimes ruthless than Hashirama's idealistic vision, but he genuinely believed these measures protected the village Hashirama created. Hiruzen Sarutobi embodied the Will of Fire more completely than any other character except perhaps Naruto himself. The third Hokage consistently chose village welfare over personal interests, even when those choices caused him enormous pain. He fought in multiple wars, outlived most of his generation, watched his successor die, and returned to office despite his age. Hiruzen's speeches about the Will of Fire emphasized that everyone in the village was precious to him, from the most powerful jonin to the youngest academy student. He described his relationship to the village as a grandfather watching his grandchildren, willing to die protecting any of them. This genuine love for every village member, regardless of their status or background, represented the Will of Fire's emotional core. The Will of Fire's practical application meant accepting personal sacrifice for communal benefit. Shinobi were expected to complete missions even at cost to themselves, protect comrades even if it meant their own death, and prioritize village security above individual desires. This philosophy produced extraordinary loyalty and cohesion within Konoha's ranks. Shinobi from different clans worked together seamlessly because they all identified primarily as Konoha ninja rather than as Uchiha, Hyuga, Nara, or Akimichi first. The village identity superseded clan identity, creating a unified force that other villages struggled to match in terms of internal cooperation. The darker implications of the Will of Fire became apparent through characters like Danzo Shimura, who claimed to act in the village's interest while committing atrocities. Danzo believed the Will of Fire meant protecting Konoha by any means necessary, including assassinating political rivals, stealing bloodline limits, and orchestrating the Uchiha massacre. He argued that his actions, while morally questionable, served the village's survival and therefore embodied the will of fire's true meaning. This interpretation revealed the philosophy's potential for abuse when taken to extremes. Protecting the village could justify almost anything if someone was willing to claim it was necessary for Konoha's security. Itachi Uchiha's tragic story illustrated the will of fire's most extreme demands and most painful contradictions. Itachi loved his clan and his village, but when forced to choose between them, he chose the village. He massacred his entire clan except Sasuke because he believed a civil war would destroy Konoha and potentially trigger another shinobi world war. Itachi's decision demonstrated the will of fire taken to its ultimate logical conclusion, where village survival justified sacrificing anything, even innocent lives and personal morality. His actions were presented as both heroic and horrific, embodying the philosophy's capacity to demand the unthinkable from those who truly believed in it. The generational transmission aspect of the will of fire manifested most clearly in teacher-student relationships throughout the series. Hiruzen taught Jiraiya, Orochimaru, and Tsunade, passing the philosophy to them. Jiraiya then taught Minato Namikaze, who taught Kakashi Hatake, who taught Naruto Uzumaki. Each generation received the previous generation's knowledge, techniques, and values, then added their own experiences before passing everything forward. This chain of inheritance meant that Hashirama's original vision influenced shinobi born decades after his death, even though they never met him. The will of fire literally traveled through generations via the teacher-student bond. Minato Namikaze's sacrifice during the Ninetales attack exemplified the will of fire in its purest form. He chose to seal the Ninetales inside his newborn son rather than let the beast destroy the village, knowing this decision would make Naruto's life extremely difficult. Minato and Kushina both died, believing their sacrifice would protect the village and that future generations would eventually recognize Naruto's role in saving them. They trusted the village to care for their son, and trusted Naruto to eventually inherit the will of fire, despite the hardship his Jinchuriki status would cause. Their faith in Konoha's future and their willingness to sacrifice everything, including their family's happiness, for the village's survival represented the philosophy's most idealistic expression. The contrast between Konoha's will of fire and other villages' philosophies highlighted what made it unique. The Hidden Sand Village operated primarily through military necessity and political alliances rather than emotional bonds between shinobi. The Hidden Mist Village during the Bloody Mist era emphasized cruelty and survival of the fittest, treating shinobi as disposable weapons. The Hidden Cloud Village focused on military strength and national power. None of these villages cultivated the same sense of familial connection and generational sacrifice that defined Konoha. Other villages had loyal shinobi, but they did not have the same cultural identity built around protecting the next generation regardless of personal cost. Naruto Uzumaki's journey represented the will of fire's redemption and evolution beyond its problematic applications. Naruto grew up rejected by the village that his parents died protecting, which should have made him bitter and resentful. Instead, he absorbed the will of fire's positive aspects through his relationships with Iruka, Kakashi, Jiraiya, and others who believed in him. Naruto took the philosophy's core message about protecting precious people and expanded it beyond just Konoha. He wanted to protect everyone, including enemies who could become friends. His interpretation of the will of fire rejected the idea that village loyalty required sacrificing or rejecting outsiders. The philosophy's relationship to the cycle of hatred became crucial during the Fourth Shinobi World War. The will of fire taught that each generation should surpass the last and solve problems their predecessors could not. This meant Naruto's generation was responsible for ending the cycle of hatred between villages that had persisted since the Warring States period. Hashirama and Madara failed to create lasting peace because their generation could not overcome deep-seated mistrust between former enemies. The will of fire demanded that Naruto's generation succeed where previous generations failed, not by repeating the same methods, but by finding new solutions informed by everything previous generations learned. Kakashi Hataki's character arc demonstrated how the will of fire could save someone from self-destruction. After losing his father, teammates, and teacher, Kakashi became emotionally detached and focused solely on mission completion, following shinobi rules. Obito's apparent death and his final words about protecting comrades changed Kakashi's understanding of what being a shinobi meant. Kakashi adopted Obito's interpretation of the will of fire, which prioritized protecting teammates over mission success. This philosophy eventually saved Kakashi from the emptiness that consumed Danzo, showing that the will of fire's emphasis on emotional bonds prevented shinobi from becoming cold weapons. The Uchiha massacre revealed the will of fire's failure to extend equally to all village members. Despite Hashirama's vision of the village as family, the Uchiha were systematically isolated and eventually deemed acceptable sacrifices for village stability. Tobirama's suspicion of the Uchiha, institutionalized into village policy, contradicted the will of fire's stated principle that all village members were precious. The fact that Konoha's leadership chose to eliminate an entire founding clan rather than address legitimate grievances showed the philosophy's failure to overcome prejudice and political expedience. The will of fire was supposed to make everyone family, but the Uchiha were never fully accepted as such. Obito Uchiha's rejection of the will of fire provided the philosophy's darkest mirror image. Obito originally embodied everything the will of fire represented, wanting to protect comrades and believing in Konoha's future. Watching Rin die shattered his faith completely, convincing him the philosophy was a lie that sent people to meaningless deaths. He adopted the opposite worldview, believing real peace required controlling everyone through the infinite Tsukuyomi, rather than trusting generations to gradually improve. Obito's transformation from the will of fire's perfect student to its complete rejection showed what happened when the philosophy's promises failed someone catastrophically. The will of fire's emphasis on emotional bonds as strength rather than weakness distinguished it from many shinobi philosophies. Traditional shinobi doctrine taught that emotions were liabilities that enemies could exploit, as Zabuza explained during the Land of Waves mission. The will of fire argued the opposite, that bonds between shinobi made them stronger and gave them reason to fight beyond simple duty. This fundamental disagreement about emotions' role in shinobi life separated Konoha's culture from other villages. Konoha shinobi were explicitly encouraged to form deep connections, while other villages often taught emotional detachment. Shikamaru Nara's relationship with Asuma Sarutobi and his response to Asuma's death illustrated the will of fire's intergenerational nature in practice. Asuma explicitly told Shikamaru and his team that they were the king pieces the older generation died to protect, and that they would eventually protect the next king pieces themselves. When Asuma died fighting Hidan, Shikamaru initially struggled with the idea that his teacher's sacrifice was meaningful. He eventually understood that honoring Asuma meant carrying forward what his teacher taught him and protecting the next generation, just as Asuma protected Shikamaru's generation. This realization showed how the will of fire transformed personal grief into purpose. The philosophy's ultimate validation came through Naruto achieving what previous generations could not. He ended the cycle of hatred between villages, reformed the shinobi world's political structure, and created genuine peace that lasted into the next generation. Naruto accomplished this not by abandoning the will of fire but by perfecting its application, extending the concept of family and protection beyond Konoha to include all shinobi villages. He proved that the philosophy's core truth that emotional bonds create strength and that each generation can surpass the last was correct, even if previous generations had applied it imperfectly or hypocritically. The will of fire's real meaning, stripped of political manipulation and examined through the series' complete arc, was about hope and progress. It taught that suffering and sacrifice were not meaningless if they contributed to a better future for those who came after. Every generation had a responsibility to solve problems, pass knowledge forward, and die believing the next generation would surpass them. This required faith in people not yet born and acceptance that individual lives mattered less than humanity's collective future. The philosophy demanded everything from its adherents, but promised that their sacrifice would eventually create a world where such sacrifices were no longer necessary. Whether that promise was beautiful or cruel depended entirely on whether it ultimately proved true, and Naruto's generation finally made it true. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to why Sage Mode was nearly lost knowledge. Sage Mode represented one of the most powerful techniques in the shinobi world. Yet, it remained almost unknown outside of a handful of legendary fighters because the training process killed or permanently transformed nearly everyone who attempted it. The technique required balancing 3 forms of energy in perfect harmony, and even the slightest mistake during the learning process resulted in irreversible petrification or mutation. This extreme danger, combined with the highly restricted access to the locations where Sage Mode could be learned, meant that knowledge of the technique survived through only a few lineages across generations, constantly teetering on the edge of being lost entirely. Natural energy formed the foundation of Sage Mode and represented something fundamentally different from normal chakra. Standard shinobi techniques combined physical energy from the body's cells with spiritual energy from consciousness and experience to create chakra. Sage Mode added a third component by drawing energy directly from the natural world itself. This natural energy existed everywhere in the environment, flowing through the earth, air, and all living things. Most people could not perceive natural energy at all, let alone control it, which immediately eliminated the vast majority of shinobi from ever discovering Sage Mode's existence independently. The balancing act required to use natural energy safely was extraordinarily precise and unforgiving. A Sage Mode user had to maintain perfect equilibrium between physical energy, spiritual energy, and natural energy in equal thirds. If the natural energy overwhelmed the other 2 components even slightly, it would consume the user's body and transform them into stone or into whatever creature was associated with the sacred place where they trained. At Mount Myoboku, the Toad Sage training ground, absorbing too much natural energy transformed people into toad statues permanently. This was not a temporary side effect or a condition that could be healed afterward. The transformation was absolute and irreversible. The toad statues scattered around Mount Myoboku served as grim warnings of how many had failed to master sage training throughout history. These were not decorations, but actual people who had attempted to learn Sage Mode and lost the battle against natural energy. Each statue represented someone with enough talent to be invited to Mount Myoboku, someone the great Toad Sage or the Elder Toads believed might succeed, yet they still failed and paid the ultimate price. The presence of these statues demonstrated that even among the elite few who gained access to Sage training, the failure rate was catastrophically high. Access to Sage Mode training required a connection that most shinobi would never establish in their entire lives. The 3 sacred places where Sage Mode could be learned were Mount Myoboku for toads, Ryuchi Cave for snakes, and Shikatsu Forest for slugs. These locations existed outside normal space and could not be reached through conventional travel. The only way to access them was through a summoning contract with the animals who lived there, and those contracts were extremely rare. A shinobi had to first prove themselves worthy of a summoning contract, then distinguish themselves enough that the summon animals would consider teaching them sage techniques, which added multiple layers of selection that filtered out all but a tiny fraction of the shinobi population. The summoning animals were extremely selective about who they invited to attempt sage training because they understood the risks involved. The Great Toad, Sage Fukasaku, explained that they only offered sage training to summoners who demonstrated exceptional chakra control, physical resilience, and mental discipline. Even among summoners who had contracts with Mount Myoboku, most were never offered the chance to learn Sage Mode because the toads judged them incapable of surviving the training. This meant that having a summoning contract was necessary, but nowhere near sufficient to access sage techniques. Jiraiya's incomplete mastery of Sage Mode illustrated how even legendary shinobi struggled with the technique's demands. Despite being one of the strongest ninja of his generation and training at Mount Myoboku for an extended period, Jiraiya never achieved perfect Sage Mode. His transformation always included toad-like physical features such as warts, enlarged nose, and pigmentation changes around his eyes. These imperfections revealed that he could not balance natural energy perfectly with his other energy sources. Fukasaku explained that Jiraiya's body was not ideally suited for sage transformation, though he never elaborated on what physical characteristics made someone more or less compatible with natural energy. The time investment required to learn Sage Mode created another barrier to the knowledge spreading. Naruto trained intensively for weeks at Mount Myoboku with Fukasaku's constant supervision, and this was considered remarkably fast progress. Most students would require months or years to reach the same level, assuming they survived long enough to progress at all. Shinobi lived dangerous lives with constant mission obligations, and very few could afford to disappear for the extended periods necessary to complete sage training. This time requirement meant that only those with extraordinary circumstances, like Naruto preparing for Pain's invasion, could justify dedicating themselves fully to learning the technique. The physical requirements for Sage Mode training eliminated many potential students before training even began. Fukasaku stated that attempting Sage training without sufficient chakra reserves was suicidal because the natural energy would overwhelm a person's system before they could balance it properly. This explained why the Toads insisted on absolute stillness during training, as movement would disrupt the gathering and balancing process. A student had to remain perfectly motionless while drawing in natural energy, feeling it accumulate in their body, and stopping the flow at exactly the right moment. The margin for error was essentially zero, and most people's survival instincts worked against them because the natural impulse when feeling overwhelmed was to move or react. The toad oil used at Mount Myoboku represented both a training aid and an additional danger that illustrated why Sage Mode remained so rare. The oil drew natural energy into the user's body automatically, allowing them to feel what natural energy was like and practice balancing it. However, the oil made the process happen faster than normal, which meant students had less time to react if things went wrong. Fukasaku and Shima could knock students out of Sage Mode by hitting them with their tongues if they absorbed too much natural energy, but this intervention had to happen within seconds. If the transformation progressed too far, even the Elder Toads could not reverse it. This meant students learned Sage Mode while constantly on the edge of death or petrification. The inability to use Sage Mode while moving created significant tactical limitations that reduced its appeal even among those who learned it. Gathering natural energy required absolute stillness, which meant a Sage Mode user could not replenish their Senjutsu chakra during combat. Once they exhausted the natural energy they accumulated before fighting, they reverted to normal chakra and lost all Sage Mode benefits. This limitation made the technique impractical for extended battles or situations where a shinobi could not predict when combat would begin. The tactical inflexibility meant that even if more shinobi could learn Sage Mode, many would find it unsuitable for their fighting style or mission requirements. Jiraiya's workaround of summoning Fukasaku and Shima onto his shoulders during battle demonstrated the technique's inherent limitations while also showing why knowledge remained restricted. The Elder Toads could gather natural energy while Jiraiya fought, then transfer it to him to maintain Sage Mode during extended combat. However, this solution required the Elder Toads' active cooperation and willingness to risk their lives in human conflicts. The Toads were selective about when they provided this assistance, which meant even Jiraiya could not rely on perfect Sage Mode in every situation. This dependency on the summon animal's cooperation ensured that Sage Mode knowledge remained tied to maintaining good relationships with the sacred places. Naruto's advantage through his massive chakra reserves explained why he succeeded where others failed, but also highlighted how rare the necessary physical gifts were. His Uzumaki heritage gave him chakra reserves far beyond normal shinobi, which provided a larger buffer against natural energy overwhelming his system. Additionally, the nine tails sealed inside him effectively multiplied his energy reserves even further, though he could not access tailed beast chakra while using Sage Mode. These unique circumstances meant Naruto's success could not be easily replicated by others, even if they gained access to Mount Myoboku. The technique required natural gifts that most people simply did not possess, regardless of their skill or determination. Shadow clones provided Naruto with an unprecedented training method that accelerated his learning but also illustrated why traditional sage training took so long. Naruto created multiple shadow clones who all practiced gathering natural energy simultaneously, and when they dispersed, all their experience and muscle memory transferred back to the original. This effectively multiplied his training time by however many clones he created. No other shinobi could replicate this training method because the shadow clone technique required enormous chakra reserves, and receiving the memories of multiple clones experiencing near petrification would mentally break most people. Naruto's unique combination of massive chakra reserves and psychological resilience made possible a training approach that would kill or drive insane anyone else who attempted it. The existence of Ryuchi Cave and Shikatsu Forest as alternative sage training locations demonstrated that different approaches to natural energy existed, but they were equally rare and dangerous. Kabuto Yakushi learned Snake Sage Mode at Ryuchi Cave, and his transformation included snake-like features such as scales and altered eyes. The White Snake Sage, who taught him, was described as even more ruthless than the toads about students dying during training. Katsuyu and Tsunade's relationship suggested that Shikatsu Forest also taught some form of sage technique, though this was never explicitly confirmed in the series. The fact that multiple sacred places existed, but sage mode remained nearly unknown, proved that the problem was not just access to one location, but the fundamental difficulty and danger of the technique itself. Hashirama Senju's ability to use perfect sage mode without any external assistance or physical mutations revealed that some individuals possessed natural affinity for the technique that made it less dangerous for them. His wood release techniques appeared connected to his natural energy manipulation, suggesting that certain bloodline limits or unique chakra natures made balancing natural energy easier. However, Hashirama was explicitly described as unique even among the legendary shinobi of his era, and his abilities could not be replicated despite extensive attempts by Orochimaru and others. This meant his mastery of sage mode provided no path forward for teaching others, because his success came from inherent qualities that could not be trained or transferred. Minato Namikaze's admission that he was not skilled at sage mode, despite knowing the technique, illustrated how even mastering the basics did not guarantee practical combat application. Minato learned sage mode but stated he could not gather natural energy quickly enough to make it useful in his fighting style, which relied on speed and instant reactions. This revealed another barrier to sage mode, spreading even if someone survived training and learned to enter sage mode, they might find it incompatible with their combat abilities. The technique demanded fighting styles that could incorporate periods of stillness or preparation, which many high-level shinobi found unacceptable compared to their existing approaches. The sensory abilities granted by sage mode, including the capacity to detect malice and sense opponents without seeing them, made the technique extraordinarily valuable for specific situations, but did not overcome the accessibility problems. Naruto's ability to sense Nagato's location and distinguish between pain bodies versus real humans demonstrated sage mode's tactical advantages. However, these benefits only mattered if someone could actually learn and maintain sage mode during combat, which remained impossibly difficult for most shinobi. The technique's power did not translate into proliferation because power alone could not overcome the training's lethality. The philosophical approaches of different sacred places added another layer of complexity to why sage mode knowledge was not shared more widely. The toads at Mount Myoboku involved themselves in human affairs and prophecy, which made them more willing to teach selected humans. Ryuchi Cave snakes were described as more aloof and dangerous, with the White Snake Sage viewing students as entertainment rather than worthy pupils. These different philosophies meant that even if someone could somehow access multiple sacred places, they would encounter different teaching methods, different standards for acceptance, and different expectations about how sage techniques should be used. The lack of standardization or shared curriculum meant each lineage of sage mode remained isolated from the others. The Great Toad Sage's prophecies played a role in deciding who received sage training at Mount Myoboku, adding an element of destiny that further restricted access. The toads believed in prophecy and fate, which meant they selected students based partly on visions of the future rather than purely on observable talent or potential. This introduced an arbitrary element to who received training that had nothing to do with the student's actual capabilities. Someone might possess the perfect physical and mental attributes for sage mode but never receive training because they did not factor into the Great Toad Sage's prophecies about the world's future. The loss of sage mode knowledge between generations became self-reinforcing because each generation that failed to produce new sage users made the technique more obscure and mythical. By Jiraiya's time, most shinobi had never heard of sage mode, and those who had considered it legend rather than a practical technique. This ignorance meant that even talented shinobi who might succeed at training never thought to pursue it because they did not know it existed. The knowledge became trapped in a cycle where only those with summoning contracts to the sacred places ever learned about sage mode, and the sacred places only taught those who already had contracts, creating a closed loop that prevented new lineages from forming. The technique nearly disappeared entirely because it required unbroken chains of knowledge transmission that were constantly vulnerable to disruption. If Jiraiya had died before teaching Naruto about Mount Myoboku, the knowledge of Toad Sage Mode would have effectively vanished from Konoha. the Elder Toads would have continued existing at Mount Myaboku, but without a human summoner to invite, they would have no way to pass the technique to a new generation. This fragility meant that wars, assassinations, or simple bad luck could sever knowledge chains at any point, and the technique depended entirely on specific individuals surviving long enough to identify and train successors. The marvel was not that Sage Mode nearly vanished, but that it survived at all, given how many points of failure existed in its transmission across generations. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.